Being late to important meetings was never her thing, but today was an exception. She was on her way to meet someone who openly hated her, but she still had to do it. Reaching the door of the cafe where the meeting was supposed to happen, the girl paused for a second, but she didn't lose her nerve. Lately, she'd already been facing people who criticized her left and right anyway. Walking into the noisy cafe, she spotted the woman she was supposed to meet, who had clearly been waiting for her for quite some time. Looking at the girl, the woman thought she herself might have made things awkward by suggesting this private meeting. The girl fixed her hair and gave the woman a strange look. That sly fox. She thought that the woman thought of her exactly that way. Honestly, the girl herself wasn't thrilled about such a sudden visit without any arrangements. The woman watched her and couldn't understand why she suddenly turned the other way. The woman had no idea where the girl was going. She started to get furious. She was practically boiling. She called out to Joo Yi and thought, she really is a fox. When the girl entered the cafe, she suddenly felt like having coffee, so she went to order it. Approaching the table, the girl greeted the woman and called her mom. She explained she had just recently come back, then asked how she was doing. The woman asked why she was so late and mentioned that she'd called her. The girl silently took out her phone and put it on the table. The girl got up and said she'd step away for a moment. She noticed the woman already had coffee, so she decided to get one for herself too. The woman was shocked by her behavior and didn't even know what to say. Then she asked if people don't usually order drinks ahead of time for meetings like this. What a pushy attitude, the woman thought. Holding the coffee cup in her hand, Joo Yi thought, great, I messed up again. And the woman noticed something shiny on her finger. The woman pointed at her hand and asked in surprise, is that a ring? The girl showed her hand with the ring on her finger and said Joon Won gave it to her. Then the woman asked if they had matching rings. While the girl was thinking about how to respond, the woman asked what was going on with her face. And if that ring was an engagement ring. The girl simply nodded. And the woman held her head, not knowing what to say, thinking, fine, let's just pretend it's a couple of ring. Then she exploded, yelling, who gets married like this? Who even gave you permission? She shouted, I guess Joon Won doesn't need his mom's approval. And the girl calmly replied, you guessed right. The girl said she tried so hard to resist, but Joon Won kept insist. The woman screamed, what are you, a puppet? If you don't like something, you should say it. Or do you just do everything he tells you to? The girl explained she didn't refuse because she didn't like the ring. She felt guilty toward her, and she called her mom again. The woman, outraged, shouted, is that it? You have nothing else to say to me? She screamed that she hated the girl. She'd never even thought about accepting her as a daughter-in-law. The girl didn't react, then gave a faint smile and agreed with the woman's words. The woman looked confused, stunned that the girl agreed with her, then yelled, stop mocking me! And Joo Yi said she didn't think she could ever change how the woman saw her. She'd made it clear from the very beginning. She called her mom again and said she'd still waited, trying to show her best side. But the woman yelled, I'm not your mom! And the girl replied, then, Joon Won's mom. The woman shouted for her to stop joking around and said it seemed like meeting her was getting too easy now. But the girl smiled and said she'd been so nervous she had to take a calming pill, and that when she got home, she'd probably need something for her stomach too. And the woman grew even angrier, clenched her fists, and asked if she was acting like this because of Joon Won. The girl said they still had things to talk through and asked if she could explain, and that's when the woman completely lost it. Looking around, the woman thought about how she used to know exactly how to behave in public. And now she was yelling over something so small. Then, smiling, the girl told her the news. She and Joon Won had decided to live together. The woman was outraged, her whole body trembling with anger. She yelled that this couldn't be happening, but the girl calmly said it was only temporary. The woman jumped up, emotions overflowing, and grabbed the coffee cup from the table. She shouted that the girl was shameless. How dare she talk to her like that? And then threw the cup of coffee right into her face. Joo Yi sat silently, staring at the woman who kept trying to humiliate her, as coffee slowly dripped down her face. The woman yelled that she'd asked her not to call her mom and demanded to know what she had to do to make the girl disappear. She said her son had never spoken with such confidence before, and she couldn't believe anything would stop him now. Pushing back her chair, the woman stood up and yelled, when elders speak, you listen. Suddenly, a man walked up to their table, pointed at the spilled coffee, and asked his mother if she had done this. The girl looked at him in shock, then asked how he'd ended up here. He looked a little angry. The mother was just as shocked. She hadn't expected to see Joon Won at the cafe. She gave the girl a sharp look and shouted, you told him about this meeting, didn't you? Trying to stop her son, she wanted him to listen and explain everything, but he wouldn't hear a word of it. Then the man walked over to the girl and told her to get up. She tried to defend his mother, saying it was fine, she hadn't meant it, and that his mom was already upset enough. He looked at her seriously and said, "If you don't get up, I'll make you." The man's mom flinched and started yelling, asking how he could talk to her like that and why he was speaking to her this way. The girl was shocked too. She didn't understand anything and asked why he was so angry. What had upset him so much? Joon Won didn't say a word. The girl looked at him closely and thought, what's wrong with him? It's just a contractual relationship. A month ago, she walked up to her door and saw a strange box lying on the floor. When she opened it, she found a lot of branded stuff inside. For a moment, she hesitated, her curiosity taking over. Opening one of the bags, she was once again surprised to see he'd taken another bra. Looking through the things inside the box, she thought he must have some kind of breasts obsession. Though honestly, her butt wasn't bad either. She crouched by the door, glanced around, and thought maybe it was time for her to move out. Once inside her apartment, the girl locked the door. She was a little scared to be alone. She stared at the box again and decided that even if she moved out, she had to get revenge. Then she grabbed her phone and called her brother, saying, "Get up." She told him that the creep had dug through her package again. And this time, he'd taken a Victoria's Secret bra from the set. The guy got out of bed and said this was a straight-up violation and that she must be furious. Barely awake, he joked, "So he's not into butts at all? What kind of weirdo doesn't take panties too?" The guy was her brother, so of course they thought alike. Then she promised him 300,000 won. He was shocked and asked if she was really willing to give him that much. He told her to wait while he checked his schedule. Then he suggested Friday at 11 a.m. since they'd have a long break between classes. She asked if he was planning to bring his friends. He said, "Yeah, we need strength in numbers. Besides, they're all huge." The guy said that this pervert would apologize as soon as he found out that they were from the physical education department. He also added that his sister might call it the perfect synergy of years of experience and the idea of earning pocket money. Joo Yi said it sounded like a contract, but he seemed to like it. And since his friends were all massive guys, she agreed. He said, "That's not just good. That's perfect." "Write him a note." She said okay and tossed the item into the trash. Then she sat at the table, took a sheet of paper and a pen, and started writing. The note said she wanted to meet him and would wait at 11 a.m. on Friday at the cafe. The girl was thrilled. After rereading the note, she said, "We'll meet soon." And then he's done for. The next day, as usual, the city streets were packed with people going about their day. As Joon Won was crossing the street, his phone rang. When he answered, Mother told him the girl had matched her schedule to his. And she asked why he already didn't like this girl when he hadn't even met her yet. Crossing the street, he kept talking and said, "Why would anyone think I'd like her?" Mother said he barely had any free time during the week, so she'd chosen a spot near his office. 30 minutes would be enough. They'd already checked her background, family, looks, and personality. All he had to do was show up. Joon Won told her not to pull a stunt like that again. He said he wasn't to blame for his brother's divorce, and that wasn't a reason to rush him into marriage. But the voice on the phone told him when he's told to go on a date, he should just go. Isn't it great that it's at a cafe across from work and not some fancy place? He kept walking down the street, annoyed, and said, "Why make trouble for other people?" The woman replied he'd recognize her instantly because she was beautiful. He started to remember the photo. His mother kept talking, saying the girl's dad had taught at a tech institute. Her mom had played the cello, and she'd grown up in a big family with great manners. The man pulled out his phone and looked at the picture. The girl had long black hair. The woman said she was part of the Seoul Symphony Orchestra. His mom said she really liked the girl, but personality and character mattered more than looks. "The last daughter-in-law from a good family was a disappointment," she added, "and I won't make that mistake again." She said if he didn't like this one, she'd find another. Mr. Choi recommended her, and I agreed. "But the final decision's yours. Isn't that perfect?" she said, and hung up. The man walked into the cafe and checked the time. 30 minutes would be enough. It had taken him 10 minutes to get here, 10 to get back, leaving only 10 minutes for the meeting. He looked around for a girl sitting alone, but the place was packed with people chatting. He thought someone nearby said they'd seen a girl like that inside. He stiffened a bit when someone commented about his face. Some girls sitting nearby said he had a great natural look and hadn't done any plastic surgery. Passing them, he overheard them saying they'd been consulting on plastic surgery for 8 years, but guessed he was doing just fine without it. Finally, at the far end of the room, he spotted a girl sitting alone at a table. He remembered what his mom said about recognizing her right away. The girl sat alone with a cup of coffee, looking around as if waiting for someone. She was stunningly beautiful. He walked up to her table and said they'd agreed to meet today. She stood up and confirmed it. She smiled and told him she was surprised he actually came. She'd been worried they wouldn't meet. Joon Won studied her carefully and admitted he thought he wouldn't show up for this blind date. She just smiled and invited him to sit. They both sat down. She told him she hadn't expected him to really come, but here they were. And he was even more handsome than she'd imagined. After a while, he silently checked his watch and said he had to leave. He'd come during work hours. Unexpectedly, she asked how he felt looking at her, but he didn't answer. She stared at him, her eyes shimmering, thinking maybe his heart would start beating faster. Her face lit up as she gazed at him, but he stayed silent. Then she asked if he had a photo of her. He said he did, then thought, why ask when she obviously had his photo too? The man was completely shocked when the girl suddenly asked what he'd been doing with her photo. He honestly thought this woman was out of her mind. The girl kept smiling, and he thought to himself that maybe his mom had picked a crazy girl on purpose. The girl suddenly stood up and demanded to know what he'd been imagining while looking at her photo. Watching how she acted, the man started to get a little nervous and thought she really might be insane. He quickly got up from his chair, saying it was time for him to go, but the girl suddenly asked if he liked it. He gave her a confused look, but she repeated the question, asking again if he liked it. Joon Won asked what exactly he was supposed to like, but the girl yelled that he played so beautifully. He couldn't understand what on earth she was talking about. She clapped her hands, laughing, and said, "See? He's so good at pretending to be normal. So sneaky, too." The girl said it was all clear now. He saw her in person, and of course he wants to meet again, because he's blushing and doesn't know how to act. She said she understood him. She's met people like him before. She added that if he thought putting on a serious face would cover up his past, he was wrong. He might look normal, but in reality, he steals other people's stuff. The man got furious. He had no idea what she was talking about, and demanded to know what exactly he supposedly stole. Suddenly, two huge guys came up and grabbed him by the arms. He had no clue what was happening. The guys shouted that they finally caught him, calling him some kind of pervert. He didn't understand why they were calling him that, but they kept yelling that he was a strong freak and held him down even harder. The girl stood up, apologized to everyone for the noise, and said these were her younger brothers who'd come to help her. Then she pointed at the guy and said she was terrified of this man, so scared she couldn't even speak, and that he'd been tormenting her for a long time. She called him a stalker, and people around started whispering, shocked by the scene. The crowd kept murmuring while the girl went on, saying her underwear had been stolen several times and someone had taken photos of her without permission. She then began to cry, saying her packages had been opened and tampered with. The cafe manager came over and said they should call the police, but the girl refused, saying it would cause too much trouble. The man started struggling, trying to break free, and he also said they should call the police, but the guys holding him called him shameless. He tried to jerk away, but they shouted that it didn't matter if he was athletic. They were all physical education majors. They grabbed him even tighter, yelling to hold him down harder, and then slammed him against the table. As they pressed him down, his wrist hit the table. There was a sharp crack. His watch broke. The cafe manager looked furious at the chaos, but the girl said they'd leave soon and apologized. He said it was fine and that he was sorry this happened. Then she turned back to the man and mockingly asked how he was feeling and if he wasn't ashamed of himself. She leaned in close and whispered that even if she filed a report, there wouldn't be enough evidence. No real threat, nothing the police could do. That's why she'd come up with her own solution. She explained that because she looked weak, people thought they could easily mess with her. Joon Won glared at her in outrage. The girl said she came from a place without streetlights, where people grow tomatoes, dig potatoes, and harvest peppers. That's the kind of woman I am, she added. She asked if he'd ever lived somewhere with moose around. It's wild boar season, she said. Better be careful. She grew up hearing warnings like that. Then she started laughing and asked if he knew how a giant red pepper grows, showing its huge size with her hands. The man shouted, "How would I know that?" "I'm not your stalker. You'd better fix this mess." Joo Yi turned to her brothers and said, "See? His story never changes. A stalker would never admit he's a stalker." He tried to explain himself, but she sarcastically said, "Wow, what a great act." Then another girl walked up from behind and asked, "Is that really Joon Won?" She asked the newcomer who that was, and the girl said she recognized him and looked genuinely surprised. The man was shocked but relieved someone finally recognized him. He said, "Yeah, that's me." The new girl, still surprised, asked what the hell was going on. Joo Yi tried to explain, saying she clearly didn't know who this man was. The newcomer tried to explain that he was actually her blind date. They must have gotten it all wrong. Joo Yi began rambling about the peaceful village where she grew up, where there wasn't even a shadow to be found. She thought her mom and dad were probably lying in the living room right now, escaping the blazing midday sun. And as they look at the red peppers she planted, they remember her face. Their daughter, the one they're so proud of. And now the same girl sat across the table, bowing her head in shame before a man she barely even knew. The man asked if she had anything she wanted to say to him. He looked devastated and deadly serious. The girl lowered her head, ashamed of what she'd done in the cafe, and began apologizing to him. Then Park Gunung, Joo Seok's friend, whispered in her ear, "Look at his watch. It looks really expensive." The girl tried to avoid the topic, but realized they were in trouble. She remembered being told since childhood to live smart like a fox, and she used to reply that she'd take that as a compliment. She thought this mess might affect her brother too. Yes, she needed to be the fox. She nervously bit her finger and confessed that a stalker had been following her for weeks, and her brother had brought friends to protect her. She explained that she had texted the stalker to meet her at the cafe, and when this man approached her like he already knew her, she assumed he was the stalker. The girl tearfully admitted she'd been too scared to think straight and apologized. She begged him not to blame her brother because it was all her fault. When Joo Seok heard her words, he tried to protect her and said that it was all his fault and only his, asking her to stop blaming herself. The girl stepped hard on his foot and told him to stop talking nonsense and stay quiet. Her brother was in pain and didn't say anything else, while the girl kept insisting it all happened because she was so terrified. She started crying and said it was entirely her fault, asking how she could make up for the damage she caused him. The man thought for a moment, then asked if she had really been that scared. Joo Yi replied, "Very, very much." Looking at him, she thought he was having an internal conflict, that he actually bought her story. Joon Won looked back at her and said, "Who's supposed to be afraid of who here? After everything you've told me about your life? Those stories about peppers and hunting wild boars, jumping on someone without even checking who it is first? How is that not violence?" he said. The girl got offended and said, "You can't call that violence. I mean, where have you ever seen someone ask a stalker for their name? You only ask when you already know it." He asked her why she was trying to convince him now, but she denied it and said she was just trying to explain everything honestly. "I just imagine how we would have introduced ourselves," she said. "I'd ask, 'Are you really my stalker?' Then offer you a seat." So of course the only logical step after that was to scream, "Attack!" Right? Time. Money, she thought as she looked at him. And that face, the kind that makes you speechless. She figured if he had everything, he probably lived a life where he never had to be kind. People adored him anyway. He must have plenty of gorgeous women around him already, she thought. A cute face won't work on him. He'll probably make me pay for that watch. She told herself not to lose hope. She could pay him back by working every day without a break, like a bull or an ant. The other girl who came to meet him asked when their conversation would end. The man told her to wait a little longer. He said, "This isn't an order, but I really can't keep talking like this. I'll need your number." The girl was shocked. He then asked if she wasn't planning to contact him, handing her his phone so she could type it in. She eventually agreed, took his phone, entered the number, and said she would pay him back. She just needed some time. He asked for her name to save the number, and she replied, Joo Yi. When the man stood up, she looked at him in surprise. She hadn't realized before how tall he was. He said, "You guys have an interesting way of dealing with stalkers. Maybe next time you'll find another way." She replied that she knew what she did was reckless and thanked him for the advice. She thought, no one should have to endure anything like this, but he probably doesn't know that. Outside, the guys wished her a safe trip, and she thanked them, telling them to get home safely too. And as she walked with her brother, he asked if she'd done it on purpose. She didn't understand what he meant, and he said he was talking about the phone number. She froze, realizing she'd given that man her old number, the one she'd just changed. The girl screamed, grabbing her head. She couldn't believe she'd actually given him the wrong number. And now there was nothing she could do. The man was supposed to meet someone else at that cafe anyway. How could I forget that I changed my number just last week? She thought, frustrated. She lightly punched her brother's shoulder and said he should have stopped her. but he said he thought she did it on purpose. She was panicking, wanting to run back and tell him she'd made a mistake, but her brother tried to calm her down. He said it was over anyway and that even if she went back, he was probably already gone. At first, she didn't want to listen and considered running back, but eventually stopped and heard him out. Hong Joo-seok told her she secretly didn't mind giving him wrong number and asked if she didn't want to pat herself on the back. She flinched and asked, "For what?" He raised his hand and said, "Your subconscious hand wrote down the old number." She was in despair, insisting it was an accident, just a stupid mistake. Her brother said, "Even if he comes looking for you, you're honest. If I hadn't asked, would you have realized you gave the wrong number?" She admitted, "No." He put his arm around her shoulder and said, "If you meet again, offer compensation one more time." That guy's really something else. He added that judging by the look of him, that man probably had tons of watches like that at home. Remembering him, Joo Yi started to cry and said, "Yeah, he really is something else." She thought she'd love to have 100 watches like his at home. He's rich. He probably doesn't even care about one broken watch. Yoo-seok said the road they were on led to a dead end, so Hong Joo-yi decided she had to work hard to pay it back, even if she didn't know whether he'd return. She was confused why it suddenly felt for him. Her brother asked if she knew his number, where he worked, or how to contact him, but she said no. "Then all we can do is earn the money," her brother said. "That's all we can do for now." He wished her a good day at work, reminding her she was going to the baseball game tomorrow. He said once she went, everything would ease up. She looked at him in surprise. "Really?" The guy replied that she should go to the game and just forget about everything that had happened until that man showed up. Meanwhile, Joon Won was already at the office. After the meeting ended, he told everyone to return to their tasks. He stood up and headed back to his desk to keep working. And then the company's managers, Heo Min-jae and Ho Hui-jo, walked up to him in high spirits, clearly eager to talk about something. They finally asked him if he remembered their plan to go to the baseball game that day. The director said he did. One of the managers snapped his fingers and asked if maybe after the game, the director would have a drink with them. Joon Won refused. Then the managers asked if he would just watch the match and leave, and the guy replied yes. The managers were thrilled that the director wouldn't be joining them afterward. Since they'd already dealt with the strongest opponent, they could now go somewhere to hang out with some girls. But after all the effort they'd put into building a friendship with the director, he didn't want to go with them. They thought with his godlike face and physical strength, he'd charm every woman in that bar. They figured they should just get rid of him right after the baseball game anyway, but he'd already said he was leaving later. He just didn't like crowded places, and he watched baseball simply because he loved the sport. Then Ho Hui-jo ran up to the director to make sure once and for all. On days like today, when he was in a black shirt, it was nearly impossible to talk to him. When a man dresses all in black, he gives off a Grim Reaper vibe. As the director walked down the hallway, female employees passing by greeted him, but all he did was give a slight nod. Ho Hui-jo practically begged him to just watch the game and leave, promising to be completely loyal again after today. While walking down the corridor, he ran into a man who greeted him and held some unknown little box in his hands. The manager told the man that this was Mr. Park from Lana Watch and asked if the director had bought another watch. The man shook his head and said he'd come about a repair this time. Ho Hui-jo asked the director if something had broken. He replied that the watch was on his desk. Mr. Park examined the watch, paused for a moment, and said the damage was worse than he thought. Ho Hui-jo shouted in shock, asking how that could have happened. The man said the only consolation was that the director had such a rare model in his collection at all. The watchmaker carefully picked it up and said he understood the director was a collector, so they'd do their best, but judging by the damage, they'd have to take it in for inspection because he couldn't evaluate it on the spot. Joon Won asked if they could take it today because he'd planned to bring it on his business trip to Geneva. The manager was shocked and asked how he could have broken it and when it happened. The director answered it was yesterday and that it was a long story. The manager asked if he had done it himself, but the director replied, "Hardly." Then the manager said he should demand compensation because those watches don't cost pocket change. Joon Won paused for a moment and then, with a sad look on his face, said the girl had broken it accidentally. Ho Hui-jo was stunned to hear that a girl had broken the watch. He wondered how angry or forceful she must have been. He asked the director if he'd be able to get compensation from her, but the man said he didn't even know. The manager was shocked that he didn't know. The director told him he hadn't even thought about it. The manager regretted asking. He said he was going back to work and left. Meanwhile, Joon Won thought about how he still hadn't contacted her. He figured it would feel awkward to call about compensation, so it was probably better to reach out once the repair bill came in. He thought about how determined she was. Even in a situation where she could owe a huge amount of money, she acted confident and handled herself well. He thought that if he were in her position being tested, it would have been a win. Then he remembered the phone. Picking up his phone, he began searching for the girl's number. Among all the contacts in his phone book, he spotted the one saved as Watch. Finding her number, the man was surprised to see that her profile picture was something completely incomprehensible. He stared at the profile picture for a long time, trying to figure out what it was and what this girl did. The next day, the girl met up with her friend, who asked if she'd gotten a message about her weird profile photo. The girl was surprised, and her friend showed her the phone. Then she said she'd sent her a screenshot and asked if that was really her picture. Her friend asked if she'd given Yeon-sung the new number since they studied in the same department, but the girl said they already talked too often. Her friend said that Yeon-sung had been annoying even in college and praised her for not giving the number. No one needed unrequited love drama. Joo Yi looked at her phone and admitted the picture really did look like a pyramid scheme. She stared at the phone again, surprised, wondering if this meant the man with the watch hadn't been able to reach her. Sitting at her computer, the girl thought about the saying, "Someone who's done something wrong can't sleep peacefully." She hadn't closed her eyes the whole night out of worry. The girl asked Jung-in if she currently wore Rolex watches and how much the repair would cost if one were broken. Choi Kyung-eun was her co-worker at the pharmacy. Her friend was surprised and said she'd never broken one. The girl said she was just curious since someone she knew also had a Rolex, and his had been broken so badly it couldn't be repaired. And then that acquaintance demanded 10 million won in compensation. She was shocked by the amount and took a deep breath. The girl then asked her friend how much it would cost if the watch was worth over 100 million. Kyung-eun was stunned and said, "Then it's better to just die." Her friend added that if the original price was 200 million, the value only goes up with time, and told her to think about whether a person with such a watch would just let it go. Joo Yi thought, "There's no way he'll let this slide. He'll definitely make me pay for it. Someone who wears a watch like that won't forget." Bori and Ina worked at the pharmacy, and as she passed by, the girl overheard them talking about how the handsome CEO would be coming today to watch the match but wouldn't stay to drink. They said their floor and the pharmacy were in completely different corners, so they probably wouldn't even run into him. They only ever saw the director in the underground parking lot. Then a coworker asked if she'd ever seen that construction company CEO from the 9th floor, but she said she walked everywhere and never went to the parking lot. Still, she was curious why everyone was making such a fuss. Ji-ho, the only guy in the pharmacy, said that even he, another guy, had to admit that man was born perfect. The girl asked if he was really that perfect, and Kyung-in said it was a shame for those who'd never seen him. But she didn't recommend him because he was like a cold wind. The CEO was always expressionless. If someone greeted him first, he'd just nod. That was it. "But it would be different with you," her friend told her confidently. "You're so pretty." But the girl asked, why would anything change? "A lot of people don't even like me." Then she overheard a coworker saying this would be the perfect chance to see Joon Won, and hearing his name made the girl flinch. Then Joo Yi suddenly turned around and asked in surprise what she had just said at the very end. Bori repeated that the CEO's name was Joon Won. The girl simply couldn't believe it. She remembered the name of the man from the cafe whose watch she had broken. She was shocked and thought, could it really be that this man is the director from the 9th floor? When she arrived at the match, the girl saw a huge stadium with a giant scoreboard. The scenery around was breathtaking. She thought his name was Rare, and then realized his last name was Rare too. But there was no way he'd come out drinking. Since it was the first company event, he decided not to ruin the vibe and just watch the game before heading out. She then thought that tomorrow she'd start putting up posters near the pharmacy to find that man. If she made the first move, maybe he'd understand when they meet. But then Joo Yi suddenly heard her name. Snapping out of her thoughts, she saw a ball flying toward her at full speed. She flinched, but to her own surprise, caught the ball with her hand. Everyone around said it was really cool. And then she quickly stood up and threw the ball back with sharp movements, wondering why she'd even caught it in the first place. But the ball came back again and hit her straight in the face. The girl screamed, and everyone burst out laughing. The man sitting next to the director started laughing and filming it on his phone. He said they'd shown Joo Yi on the big screen. She was a star now. And the director looked surprised and asked why he was filming it, but the guy said he'd show it to her later. "This has to be saved as a memory," he added. Joon Won glanced at the girl and repeated her name several times. He felt like he had seen her somewhere before. Him-ManhwaRecap said the director probably didn't know her. She was from the pharmacy on the first floor. Joon Won looked at her more carefully and asked if she really worked in their building. After the game ended, everyone went outside, and Bori told her to check what she'd just found on her phone. As they were walking down the street, her friend read out loud that the girl had refused a home run. "That's the girl who got hit in the nose." Joo Yi thanked her for telling her. Her friend laughed and said that actually worked in her favor. With that bruise, everyone could tell her nose was real. They laughed loudly, and Ina reminded them they'd agreed to meet in front of the chicken restaurant. When they arrived at the restaurant, they ran into the guys walking toward them and greeted each other. Minji, walking closer, asked if the girls had been waiting long. He seemed genuinely happy to see them. Joo Yi was stunned when she saw him. She couldn't believe her eyes. Could it really be him? Her co-workers next to her said the CEO had also come. She turned around and thought that if she'd known he was coming, she would have run away long ago. Lowering her head, she wondered if there really was a god in this world. And it seemed maybe there was. Then she heard the girls greeting the director. She thought, God sent this man so the sinner could pay for their sins. This man is like the Grim Reaper in human form. Joon Won noticed the girl hiding her face. He walked closer and, seeing Joo Yi, asked if it was her again. She looked at him and said what a coincidence it was that they worked in the same building. He asked how her nose was doing. She replied that everything was fine, even though she was already planning to leave. Money is money, she thought. But more than anything, I'm embarrassed I gave him the wrong phone number. She decided she'd come up with an excuse later. The girl was in such a rush she didn't even notice a car approaching as she crossed the street. And the man saw it, shouted to her, then quickly grabbed her and pulled her close, saving her just in time. He guided her to the side of the road and asked if she was okay. Their friends, who had been frightened, all rushed toward them. He noticed her nose was badly hit, but Joo Yi insisted she was fine. He moved closer and asked her to let him check her nose. It looked like she had hurt it again, but she said it was fine and thanked him. Then the girl saw her nose and screamed that she needed a tissue. Joon Won told her to just sit still. He took a tissue and gently began wiping away the blood, saying it looked like she'd hit it pretty hard. Joo Yi felt awkward and kept saying she was fine. But he suggested she press the tissue against her nose, and their coworkers tried to help. The man grabbed a huge wad of tissue and started pressing it to her nose. She thought, oh God, please let this just be a dream. After everything that happened, the guys and girls went to a cafe, sat down at a big table, and ordered drinks. Joo Yi thought to herself that she was now sitting across from the amazing owner of that watch, the one her brother said she'd never meet again. It turned out he worked on the 9th floor of the same building where she worked. He had even taken over a space that wasn't offered to financial companies. Then she grabbed her phone and typed a message. If I disappear, my debt will pass on you. Good luck, bro. Feeling lost, she just went along with everyone. But if things were like this, she decided to explain everything and give the director her real phone number. The only problem was, she didn't know when to do it. He was listening very attentively to his employees. And just when she was about to start the conversation, her friend handed her some food saying it was delicious. As Joo Yi tried to take a bite, she still couldn't figure out how to start talking to him. Ho-Huijo, sitting nearby, tried to ask the director something, but he replied there was no need. After a while, he asked if the director liked Joo Yi. He'd seen how worried he was about her. Joon Won turned away and said she had gotten hurt because of him. But the guy asked if he just wanted to help, since usually he didn't worry about people who got injured. Then he said Ina had told him that Joo Yi spends her days in the pharmacy rejecting guys who confess their love to her. Then Joon Won asked who Ina was. Huijo replied that she was dating Him-ManhwaRecap, the youngest in their company, and worked the front desk at the pharmacy on the first floor. The guy said that lots of guys come to the pharmacy to see Joo Yi, bringing her gifts and sweets. And there was also that doctor from the plastic surgery clinic on the 5th floor. She turned him down too. In fact, she turns down everyone who confesses their feelings to her. But the director just stared at him. His gaze was cold and serious. He didn't say a single word. The guy thought maybe he'd said something wrong. It probably meant the director didn't come here because of Joo Yi. The girl kept eating the spicy food, but her friend told her to stop, or her nose would hurt even more. Looking at the director, the girls asked if he was always this quiet. They were surprised at how little he spoke. Huijo said that's just how he is, so don't get scared. The director's always calm and serious. He explained that the director Do must be in a bad mood today. The girl tilted her head, wondering why. Then Ho-Huijo started talking about how yesterday someone broke his watch. Joon Won glanced at him, trying to calm him down. The girl's friend gasped when she heard about the broken watch and asked if he knew who did it. Maybe it was Joo Yi, she thought. Then told the director he should make that girl pay compensation. Jung-un looked at the girl and whispered softly, "Wait, are they talking about you?" The guy said the director never lectures women about their manners. If someone pisses him off, no matter their age or gender, he doesn't say a word. He just makes them regret their entire life. But if nothing bad happens, he's actually kind and fair. He's got a good personality. The guy repeated that, then winked. But the director shot him a furious look and said he'd had too much to drink. The guy laughed and said he was fine, but that the director shouldn't be calling any girls. He told the director to report it to the police, but Joon Won told him to shut up. Then the director looked at Joo Yi closely and thought, wait, is she crying? She really was. The girl quickly stood up and said she'd step out to the bathroom for a minute. In the bathroom, she splashed water on her face, thinking the spicy food was enough to drive her insane. Why do I look so weird in front of him? She thought. Her eyes were watering from the spice. Today of all days, the director had to see me like this. She grabbed her head, as if punching an innocent man and breaking his watch wasn't enough. She still went to that baseball game like nothing happened. She forced herself to think of a way to apologize and calm him down, but her brain screamed it was done for. Suddenly, her phone rang. She looked at the screen. It was her mom calling. Her mom asked if they were having fun. Hearing her voice made Joo Yi feel warm inside. She asked if her mom wasn't asleep yet and told her to go rest. But her mom said she was just about to sleep, then remembered Joo Yi said she'd be out with her friends from the pharmacy. Joo Yi told her they were hanging out with people from other companies in the same building, and that one of the girls introduced them to her boyfriend's coworkers. Mom said that sounded nice and that it's good to go out with good friends. Joo Yi started doubting whether she even wanted to be there. Her mom told her, if it's not fun or the vibe isn't right, just drink a little and go home early. Joo Yi sighed, agreed, and said she really wanted to go home. After a short silence, Joo Yi asked her mom if she happened to have 200 million won. Then she laughed and said she was just asking. Her mom playfully answered, "Of course I do." Joo Yi blinked. Did she hear that right? Her mom repeated it. "Of course I do." Joo Yi said maybe she misheard and asked where she got so much. Her mom said she went to a community meeting. She explained it was a neighborhood gathering with people she'd known for over 10 years. Joo Yi said, "Wow, Mom, you're the coolest." Then her mom went on saying she'd gone to Wando Island, where there were tons of seaweed, so she bought a bunch. I couldn't believe she actually bought seaweed. Her mom asked, "Weren't you asking about seaweed?" Then someone's voice in the background asked who she was talking to. Mom said it was Joo Yi, and that their daughter must really want seaweed soup. "No, Mom, I was asking about the money, not seaweed," the girl thought. Her mom said she'd send her a package tomorrow, since her daughter must be craving seaweed so badly she's asking about it in the middle of the night. Joo Yi sighed. What money, really? Her parents were worrying about her while she was losing her mind over everything. Mom told her to just cook the seaweed with beef or shrimp. I said okay and thought, God, I'm pathetic. She thanked her mom and said she really did want seaweed soup. She told her mom and dad she loved them and hung up. After the call, she had no excuse left. She knew she had to go back. And then she saw a strange man standing right in front of her. Back at the cafe, Ho Hui-jo offered Joon Won a drink but told him to hand over his card first in case he got too drunk. The director ignored him. The man was thinking about the girl. She'd been gone a while. Why hadn't she come back yet? Was it because of the talk about the broken watch? The girl had said a stalker had been following her for weeks. Did Joon Won wondered if something had happened? The guy at the table asked why Joo Yi still hadn't returned, but her friend said she'd just gone to the bathroom. After a while, Bori started to get worried and tried calling her. She called again and again, but I didn't answer. Did Joon Won felt his irritation grow? He finally stood up and went outside, trying to call her too, but she didn't pick up. Where could she have gone, he thought. He paced nervously outside the cafe, still calling. There was no way she'd just disappear for no reason. But then a man's voice answered. Damn it, the man growled. Joon Won asked who he was. He couldn't make sense of it. The man raised his voice, demanding to know who picked up her phone. He froze when he realized it was a man. Joon Won asked, Isn't this Joo Yi's phone? The man answered yes and shouted why the hell he keeps getting calls at such a late hour asking Joo Yi? He shouted that she was messing up his work and told them to show their faces already, those bastards. Joon Won asked where he was. The man shot back, "Why should I tell you?" Joon Won asked again. The man yelled into the phone, telling him to get over there already, because he was ready for a serious talk. The man said, "Yeah, that's exactly what I said. You're bastard," then rushed outside. As Joo Yi was leaving the restroom, she ran into two random guys who asked if she was okay. She replied that she was fine. Then she started laughing. She'd been so scared of those guys that she actually screamed. Walking out of the store, the girl thought that when she got back to the cafe, she'd ask the director if he'd really called her and act surprised that someone else answered. Then she decided she'd say she changed her number a week ago and that he probably called the old one. Perfect, she thought. That's exactly what I'll tell him. Entering the cafe, she thought she didn't really look like some kind of scammer. Then she ran up to her friends and cheerfully shouted that she'd bought ice cream. A Choi Kyung-eun stood up and asked where she'd been. The girl explained she went to buy ice cream and the store turned out to be far away. Then Bori asked why she hadn't answered her calls, and the girl said she was on the phone with her mom when she called. Her friend started crying, and the girl told her not to cry because of her, apologized for making her worry, and explained that her phone battery had died. Then Joo Yi asked the director if he'd called her by any chance, but when she turned around, she noticed he wasn't there. She asked where the director was, but Ho Hui-jo, who sat next to him, looked surprised and asked why he hadn't shown up yet. Her friends told her they thought the director was with her, since both of them had left one after another and hadn't returned for a while. The girl got upset and said that was impossible, and the guy asked where their director had gone. He called the director, asked where he was, and told him they were worried since he'd been gone for a long time. Then the guy was surprised to hear the director had called a taxi and asked why. The director explained he was trying to get to Paju. The girl was confused. Paju? Why would he go there so late at night? What happened? She thought, why go so far at this hour? Could it be things actually worked out with that girl from Blind Date? At first, her friends wanted to call the police, but then they thought, why? The girl asked, wasn't he just meeting someone? Then Joon Won told the guy someone had been kidnapped, and he asked, surprised, who exactly? The director explained that Joo Yi had been kidnapped. The guy asked him where exactly that happened. While the girl was stunned, they were talking about her. The director said some man had kidnapped her. Hui-cho tried to ask more questions, but the director hung up. The guy thought, what is he talking about? She's right here. He asked the girl if she had given the director her phone number since he kept saying she'd been kidnapped and wasn't making any sense. The girl pulled out her phone and thought about what he was saying. She hadn't gotten any calls. Then she couldn't figure out which number he'd even dialed since he didn't know her number. Then it hit her. He must have called her old number. And now some guy owned it. She rushed outside and saw Joon Won standing by the curb, phone in hand, calling a taxi. Then she saw him getting into the cab, started running fast, and shouted, "Taxi!" trying to stop him. As she ran across the street, she thought, God, I'm such an idiot. Of course he'd call the old number. Who knows who answered or why he's going so far? Then she yelled his name loudly, telling him to stay right where he was. The man was standing by the curb as the taxi pulled up. He quickly moved toward the car. The girl kept running, trying to stop him, yelling for him not to get in the car, but he didn't hear her. She ran down the road, screaming for him to stop, but the taxi drove off and she couldn't catch up. The driver looked in the rearview mirror and muttered that this was typical. People drink too much and start acting weird. Then the driver looked at the guy and asked if he knew the woman chasing the car. The director turned around, confused, and said she seemed crazy. The driver replied that it looked like she was running after their cab. The girl kept running with everything she had, shouting for the car to stop. She was exhausted, but she didn't quit. Finally, the taxi driver pulled over. Joon Won got out of the car, and they went to a nearby park, sitting on a bench under a big street lamp. The man apologized, then looked at the phone number and asked if it wasn't hers. She explained it used to be her number, but now it belonged to some stranger. She said she'd changed it a week ago and still wasn't used to it. The man was surprised and asked if that's why she kept giving out the old number. She told him it wasn't on purpose. She just dialed it out of habit. Joon Won pulled out his phone and asked for her new number. She took out her phone and happily agreed to give him her new number. The man dialed it, but there was no signal. She smiled and said her battery had died. Tilting her head slightly, she apologized and said she'd probably ruined his mood. Then she added that she'd make up for all the trouble she'd caused. The man looked at her seriously and said, "Of course you will." She apologized again. Then Joo Yi grabbed her phone and he looked surprised, asking why. She explained she'd give him her email so when the repair bill was ready, or if he needed anything else, he could message her anytime. She smiled and said she'd read the message and reply right away. The man thought she was trying to settle things peacefully. Then he showed her the bruise on his arm and asked what he should do about it. What if she disappeared again after leaving just her contact info? The girl flinched in fear. She didn't even know what to say when she saw the bruise on his arm. She told him she couldn't quit her job and run away. But the man replied that she already had something like that on her record. Then the girl suggested a plan. She'd text him every morning to prove she hadn't disappeared or changed her number. The man's expression changed, and he asked if she really wanted his day to start with her messages. Then the girl suggested sending him a message at a set time, maybe around 3 p.m. The man was surprised at first and didn't know what to say, but then he agreed since there wasn't really another option. But then he suggested they set a time limit on how long this would last, and she agreed. It was a beautiful sunny morning. The weather was amazing, the birds were singing their sweet songs, and the girls were hurrying to work. Sitting in the car, the girl asked her colleague Bori if she had done anything stupid yesterday while drunk. Her friend said she didn't know because she hadn't seen anything, but when she went to take a shower, she never came out. The girl laughed, realizing that's why she woke up on the bathroom floor. Her friend said, thank God she wasn't paralyzed, because once the director Du left, she started drinking a lot. Then Bori asked if anything happened to her, but she said she'd just relaxed and drank, knowing she'd be staying over. Later, her friend asked if anything happened between her and the director, and she said as far as she remembered, nothing did. Then the girl started telling her friend how last night the guy had walked her down the street back to the restaurant. They walked side by side, but both were silent. The silence was so awkward that the girl thought it would have been more comfortable to walk separately. She slowed down, and when the man walked a little ahead, he turned around, looked at her, and waited for her to catch up. They walked together again, and she thought maybe she didn't have to do that. As they reached the cafe, she asked Joon Won if he could drink. He gave her a strange look and said he didn't know. Then she asked if he had ever gotten drunk because he looked pretty strong, but he said he didn't know because he'd never drunk before. He asked her if she really drank until she got drunk, and she answered, "Is that even possible?" Then he opened the cafe door for her and wished her a good drink today. She was surprised. Why today? And why did it sound so specific? So nothing happened last night, the girl told her friend, then said she'd get out of the car nearby. She said that was fine. Bori wondered why she wanted to get out there, since there was a nice cafe next to the pharmacy too. But Joo Yi said it was nice weather, and she wanted to walk, telling her friend to go ahead. She'd bring her some good coffee. Fine, her friend said, ordering an einspanner, and told her not to pick something weird like she usually did. The girl quickly got out of the car, repeated the name of the coffee her friend wanted, and ran to the cafe. As she walked in, she greeted the staff, then started thinking about what she should order for herself. At first, she thought she shouldn't go to the cafe next to the pharmacy because the director might come, and they'd run into each other again. Then she placed her order: 2 hot Americanos, 1 iced latte, 1 hot latte, and some bagel sandwiches. After ordering, she turned around and saw Joon Won, who had also come to get coffee. She was shocked to see him there, and he clearly didn't expect to see her either. She thought it hadn't even been a full day, and they'd already run into each other again. But it was fine. She'd already apologized. She asked if he got home safely last night, and he nodded. Then she thought all that was left was to set things straight. She couldn't afford to seem too soft. Then the cashier repeated her order, saying she'd ordered 5 sandwiches and 4 coffees. The girl suddenly remembered she hadn't ordered what Bori had asked for. She realized she'd forgotten the einspanner for her friend and quickly added it. After all, she'd promised to bring her a good coffee. When she placed the order, it felt like she was floating in space. Then she realized she'd said the wrong name for the coffee. She started saying, "No, not Einstein, einspanner," and fixed her order. She blushed. The man was right there, and she didn't want to look like a fool. Then the cashier apologized, saying their cafe didn't make einspanner. The girl asked why. She got really upset and almost cried, but then the cashier suggested she order something else. Joo Yi got flustered and ordered a hot Americano, but then changed her mind and asked for it iced. They double-checked if she really wanted iced Americano, and she said yes, that's exactly what she meant. She turned away, thinking how awful that whole exchange was, and why she'd even said Einstein out loud. Then she heard her name and felt the man lightly grab her by the shoulder, asking if she was even looking where she was going. She quickly grabbed her order, thanked him, and thought how embarrassing this was. Then Joon Won came closer and asked if she could carry all that by herself. She looked at him in surprise. She quickly grabbed everything and said, "What's so hard about it?" Of course I can, and said goodbye. Joon Won picked up his coffee, looked at her as she walked away, and told her to be careful. What was that? She thought. Why did he freeze for a second? Did he want to say something else? She thought maybe when he asked if she was okay carrying everything, he was actually offering to help. If that's the case, he should have said it more clearly. Stepping outside, the girl told herself to stop thinking about him. Then she heard someone hurrying to catch up to her. She couldn't tell who was calling her. What a weird place to run into someone, a guy said. It's the first time we've seen each other since high school. Then he asked how Joo Seok was doing. She recognized him. He was a sunbae from the high school Yoo Seok briefly attended. His name was Hwang Dae-sik. After he saw her at Joo Seok's entrance ceremony, he'd bugged the guy for a whole year, saying he'd fallen in love with his sister at first sight. He used to say he'd make her his girlfriend. Joo Yi was confused and asked why her. She couldn't understand it. Then, along with her answer, the guy screamed and started ripping off his uniform, shirt, and tie. After that incident, he earned the nickname the Naked Screecher. So when she was in school, she didn't dare step out of the dorm and focus solely on her studies. The guy said that after graduation, she completely disappeared from contact, so he went after her to Seoul, and finally they met. The girl said she had coffee in her hands, so she couldn't shake his hand. The guy said she should have said something so he could take the coffee. Then he asked how she was doing and mentioned he'd heard she worked at a pharmacy. He asked if she worked nearby and had become a pharmacist, but then said there wasn't the place to talk about it. Strange, the guy said. Out of all people, such a beauty immediately caught my eye. The moment I saw you, I ran after you. He said she shouldn't think it was hard for him at all. He actually loved chasing after her, then laughed. The girl grabbed her coffee and said she had to go. He asked her to leave her number and invited her to lunch, but the girl pretended she didn't hear him. He replied that, as she could see, he wasn't the same Hwang Dae-sik anymore. He wasn't being pushy, just happy to see her. He pulled out his phone and asked for her number again, but the girl thought, first the stalker, then the guy with the watch, and now this one. If she could fend off all this trouble, maybe she'd win the lottery next. Then she wondered whether to have lunch with the dressed-up Hwang Dae-sik or see the Naked Screecher. Joon Won drove by, saw the girl with some guy, and was surprised, wondering what was going on. He sat in the car for a long time, unable to understand who this guy with Joo Yi was or what was really happening. The girl gave the guy a very stern look and said she had to leave because she was running late. Dae-sik extended his phone again, asking her to leave her number before going, since they really hadn't seen each other in a long time. Joon Won thought to himself that some strange guy had attached himself, but he wouldn't interfere. He didn't want to get dragged into shady business again. He needed to go. Hong Joo Yi first pressed her lips together, then started laughing, saying, "All right, give me your phone," and called him Appa. Joon Won heard her call him Appa. No matter how she tried to handle the situation, she called him Appa. Then he got out of the car. Then Joon Won slowly approached them and asked what they were doing. He didn't understand who this guy to the girl was. Joo Yi was very surprised to see Joon Won, then asked why he hadn't left yet. Hwang Dae-sik grabbed the girl's hand and asked who Joon Won was and if she knew him, but she didn't know how to answer. Joon Won told the guy to let her go, but he said he was just happy to see a fellow hometown girl, and the man was interfering. The girl asked if he saved her number, and the guy showed his phone and said of course he had. Then the girl looked at Joon Won and he asked if she wasn't going to work. She said of course she was, but she was busy now. Joon Won offered her a ride in his car, saying they were going the same way. The girl wondered why he decided to give her a lift. Hwang Dae-sik told the man that he was talking to the girl and that he was ruining the whole mood by interfering. Joon Won said the guy was clinging on the street, whining, and called that a conversation. The guy got very angry, asking where the man was getting involved since he and Joo Yi had known each other for a long time. Then the girl got angry and asked what was wrong with them. Hwang Dae-sik asked if he was Joo Yi's boyfriend or something. The girl was confused and looked at Joon Won. Suddenly the man answered, "What if I am?" Then the girl thought she couldn't let Hwang Dae-sik grab the phone and shouted for him to stop. She grabbed his hand tightly, the one holding the phone, and he yelled at her to let go, asking who that guy was to act like that. Without letting go, she shouted for him to stop because that Joon Won was her. Joon Won wanted to say that he was her boyfriend. Then Joo Yi started yelling for Dae-sik Oppa to apologize because he had no idea who he was dealing with. Dae-sik saw that the girl was furious, started trembling, and couldn't say anything else. Then the girl started explaining that she'd spent all those years shedding liters of sweat and tears. And that's why she had risen to such a position, because she dreamed of meeting this person And this person in their company was above the heavens. Incredible. First in performance in 10 years with 3 diamonds. This guy was the sales king of the month. In short, their idol. Joon Won looked at the girl, not understanding what she was talking about, but she just blushed while looking at him. The girl didn't know how to explain, then said that the number she gave him was in Kakao Talk. The guy looked at his phone, found her number, and asked what it was. Was that pyramid scheme? The girl continued, saying she didn't work at a pharmacy. When she came to this city, she studied hard, found a nice place, and got a job there. She said she left pharmacy right after university, and the guy was very surprised to hear that. Then she made a concerned face and said he should listen. It'd be interesting for him too, since they were hometown buddies. She continued, saying how great it was that she was a mid-level manager, so she could sell only water purifiers and heated mats. Then she looked at Joon Won and said, "Here's our superhero. Stone beds, air purifiers, even massage chairs. He could handle it all." Then she winked and asked if he'd buy a filter from her. The guy flinched a little. Daeshik didn't understand what she was talking about, but she said he should know he was insanely lucky. It was really hard to buy such a functional item at that price. Joon Won was shocked, not understanding how she could lie so easily, but she smiled and shouted to Daeshik that this was his chance. "But not here," she yelled, grabbing his hand. "Since you wanted this yourself, let's have lunch and talk at the same time." Then she shouted that it would take too long to explain and that he should just follow her. But Daeshik was trembling and trying to pull his hand away, which the girl held tightly. Then the guy stepped back a little and told Joo Yi to calm down. But she said her heart was racing and there were discounts on laundry detergent and bedding right now. Then he pulled out his phone and said to wait a second, asking if it was really her, showing a profile picture. But the girl said, "Who else could it be if not me?" Daeshik started getting very nervous and broke out in a cold sweat, then asked if it really was her. Joon Won just stared at him silently. Then the girl grabbed Joon Won by the sleeve, looking at him with mischievous eyes, as if asking, "Is this right?" Joon Won couldn't refuse the girl, whose eyes were shining with joy and nodded in agreement. Daeshik was completely shocked. The girl, holding Joon Won's sleeve, smiled and thanked him. She asked Daeshik if he knew what was important right now and that from this moment she would change his life 180 degrees. But he denied it. Then Daeshik said he'd completely forgotten and had things to do, so he'd call later. But the girl said he would just leave because they had so many products to try. He refused and asked if her parents knew, but then said she should send his regards to Yoo-seok, her brother. The girl said it was such a shame, and if he was in the area, he should call. Daeshik replied that it was unlikely since he usually wasn't around there. The girl waved her hand and said if he called, she would come herself. But the guy, scared, said there was no need to go. He turned and quickly walked away. He thought about how much she could change and still get tangled up in a pyramid scheme. Joo Yi smiled and shouted after him that she didn't understand what he said. Probably ordered a water filter. The guy ran down the street without looking back, and the girl thought the naked screecher hadn't changed at all. The girl was very pleased with herself, took a sip of her refreshing coffee, and Joon Won just stood there watching her. Joon Won asked the girl why she wasn't carrying the coffee and wondered how she could even think of that, though it wasn't exactly praise. The girl winked and said it was a natural talent she couldn't hide, then smiled. She asked the director why he said he was her boyfriend. Joon Won pondered, then asked when he had said that. Joo Yi turned and said she heard he was about to say he was her boyfriend, but he truly couldn't understand what she meant. They looked at each other with very tender eyes, and the girl asked the director if he liked her. The girl asked again if he really liked her. He replied that it was absolutely impossible. Didn't he already say that it wasn't so? Then the girl said that's why you shouldn't meddle in other people's affairs or take sides. The world is scary these days. You might get hurt helping someone. Then she said that if the person you help misinterprets your intentions, thinking you have feelings for them, the man thought this was coming from the one who made him the head of the pyramid scheme. Then Joon Won asked if that guy would go and tell her parents because, as it seemed, they were from the same hometown. The girl replied that his parents lived far away, so everything was fine, very far from her home. Then she said that no matter what, she was grateful to him, said goodbye, and that it was time for her to go. And then the man saw that it was really hard for the girl to carry the coffee and offered her a ride. She exhaled and thought it really was heavy. The man walked to the car, opened the door, and politely offered her a seat. He really wanted to help her. The girl agreed, thinking their relationship couldn't get any better, but there was no need to make it worse. They drove through the morning city with many cars around, and Joon Won stopped at a traffic light. A car stopped behind them with some girls inside. One turned to Haewon, asking if she saw the car ahead and if that was a pharmacist from the first floor. The girls wondered if Director Do was dating a pharmacist since they saw them together. "How cute," said one girl. "It seems like they like each other." Hwan looked at them, confused. When they drove past, Ji-hye said why he had pretended not to be interested in women. And she told Hwan that she seemed to be on his radar too because she was beautiful, like a celebrity, popular at work, and people liked her. There's no way he wasn't interested in her. Then Ji-hye thought her friend was very beautiful but had a nasty character. So by interacting with her, she would gain followers and become popular, helping her rise. Hwan thought he acted like he wasn't interested in dating, then was charmed by a fox-like woman. What a jerk. The girl turned to her friend and asked if she saw everything. Ji-hye didn't understand what exactly, and the girl asked if maybe they weren't dating. "Of course," replied the friend. "Maybe not." Hwan said she didn't care. The girl just had no pride. Looking at the man, Hwan said it was obvious he didn't have feelings for her, and she felt sorry for the girl. She turned to Ji-hye and said she was probably very interested in their relationship and smiled. Hwan suggested to her friend to go check on them. Ji-hye was very surprised and didn't know what to say. Entering the pharmacy, Ji-hye saw Joo Yi working, looking very tired. The girl was offering ointment to a man. Then Joo Yi was invited to lunch. She agreed and suggested going to change first. Jung-eun suggested she eat well since she looked a bit tired, and the girl happily went to lunch. While changing, the girl wondered why her friend said she looked tired. Then she looked in the mirror and asked, "Ina, has her face been this gloomy all morning?" The friend was confused and didn't know how to respond. While Joo Yi looked at herself in the mirror, her friend said she thought it was due to yesterday's drinking. Joo Yi replied it wasn't the alcohol. It was because she got into that guy's car, then thought she should have walked with coffee even 1,000 blocks. Who knew it would be so quiet in the car, it was almost uncomfortable to breathe. If only she knew he wouldn't even turn on the radio. She felt déjà vu from last night. Then the girl, laughing, asked the man if everyone at their workplace really liked Americano. Joon Won replied that he bought it without asking, because if he asked, everyone would order a different coffee. There was completely silent in the car again, and being next to the man made her feel awkward, so when she got out and said goodbye, it felt like she was trying to escape. Meanwhile, at the pharmacy, a pharmacist approached Ji-hye and asked what she was looking for and which medicine she needed. Ji-hye was initially flustered, biting her finger, then ordered a bandage and lens solution. Then Ji-hye turned and saw Joo Yi enter the pharmacy, and she even started to tremble a little at the sight. The girl was a bit nervous, not knowing how to start a conversation, and then asked if the girl was planning to go to lunch. Joo Yi wondered what was happening since she wasn't in her work uniform, which meant she wasn't coming from the hospital of this building. The girl asked Ji-hye what she was interested in, if she needed anything, and if she could help find something. But the girl asked if Joo Yi didn't remember her since she worked on the 12th floor. The client said she had bought medicine from her last week and the week before. The girl replied that she hadn't even had time to look at today's clients and was completely overwhelmed with work. The client quietly whispered to herself that she didn't think it was about being busy, and pondered it. Ji-hye said she greeted her because she visited often and thought the girl would remember her. Joo Yi exhaled and wondered why she was telling her this. Ji-hye said that, by the way, she saw her in the morning getting into a car. The girl looked at her, surprised. The girl smiled and asked if it was probably her boyfriend's car since it looked very luxurious. Joo Yi replied that it wasn't her boyfriend, then leaned slightly and asked if she hadn't noticed the car's owner. Ji-hye was initially confused, but then said she really hadn't noticed. The girl asked if that was really the case. The girl thought it was strange since she got in the car first and he got in afterward. The car's tinted windows made it unlikely she could have seen him. The client replied she probably didn't see him. Joo Yi frowned, thinking she seemed to understand the situation. The client was curious about Director Do. Then Kyung-eun approached and told her to go to lunch while she would handle things herself. The girl left but heard her colleague ask the client what she was looking for in the pharmacy. The client replied she didn't need anything at all. Once outside, the girl asked her friend if she remembered that woman, but Ina asked if she even knew how many people came to the pharmacy. The friend said that with prescriptions, a passport photo isn't needed, so it was strange to ask. She guessed the woman liked the director and was scouting him out. Joo Yi thought he was already the king of their building, and most likely, she wasn't the client's target. The friend said that was probably true and added she would have a headache if she got involved with him. Then the girl heard her phone ring, and looking at the screen, she saw it was Director Do calling. Looking at the phone screen, the girl wondered if he was a ghost, as the phone kept ringing. She stopped in the middle of the street, looked up, and wondered if he had heard their conversation. The girl picked up, and at first it was completely silent, but then the director said it was good that she answered. The girl was surprised why he called. Joon Won said he was checking if she would answer the call and was about to finish the conversation. He hung up, and the girl couldn't figure out what had just happened. Her friend also asked what had happened. Joo Yi stared at her phone for a long time, very flustered, then wondered why this was happening to her. Exactly at 3 a.m., the man's phone rang. He was fast asleep but had to wake up. Looking at the screen, he saw many messages from Joo Yi. The girl wrote to him that she had said he could trust her. She could even imagine his surprised expression right now. How could he think that she would deceive him and run away? She even felt a little hurt. She had worked so hard to become a pharmacist, and when she got in, her dad even hung a poster to celebrate. She wrote that she wouldn't quit, would earn money and repay him, so he could be at ease. Even though she earned like an ant, the day would come when she could pay off the watch. And until then, she would work diligently. The girl added a Dobby-free elf emoji. Then she wished him a good day. And with that, the 3 o'clock fairy from the first floor took her leave. After reading all the messages, Joon Won jumped out of bed, not understanding what had happened to her. The 3 o'clock fairy, the man thought. Did she even have a sense of self-sufficiency to talk about herself like that? Judging from the messages, he hoped she wrote them while drunk. Then he read a message where the girl wrote that he probably got upset because of her. She was sorry, she wouldn't run away, and would write according to their agreement at the same time every day. Then wished him a good day, even if she sent messages at 3 a.m. 3 o'clock p.m. had become 3 a.m., the man thought, holding his head. If she wasn't trying to get on his nerves, it must have been a timer error on the message. Then the girl sent a cheerful emoji, and he thought, could she really send something like that? Joon Won wondered if this was even her style. It seemed the woman who sent this messages didn't know what was happening and was sound asleep. Looking at the phone, he thought it was the fairy and hung up, wondering where she was looking. The next day, Joon Won went to the pharmacy where the girl worked, planning to see her. He took his phone and called her, but she wasn't at her desk, which surprised him greatly. Then the girl picked up and the man asked if she slept well. She was surprised, and he asked again if she really slept well. Joo Yi said she slept well and was surprised the director called her in the morning. Joon Won thought she probably didn't know what time she sent the message and wondered how she would react, asking where she was since she wasn't in the pharmacy. The girl was surprised he was at the pharmacy and said she had stepped out for a moment. The man thought she sent that message, but who knew if she would behave like last time. Joo Yi asked if it was urgent because she was busy. The man asked if she really didn't know anything. The girl replied quite frankly that she had no idea what had happened. The girl said she wouldn't be at work today. She said it wasn't a good time to talk and asked if she could call him later. At first, the man wondered why he should wait for her, but then he agreed. The girl replied that they had a deal. Joon Won stood in the middle of the room, trying to understand how she could have ended his phone call first. Meanwhile, Joo Yi was spending time shopping with her mom, who jokingly called out to her and asked if the lady could come over for a moment. The girl spent the whole day with her friends and finally returned home late at night, where her mother was waiting for her. Her mom asked if it was okay that she hadn't gone to work all day. The girl sat down next to her mom on the bed and said she just needed a break. Young Yoonuni had really insisted that she relax. Joo Yi trembled and looked shocked when her mom asked why she wasn't resting. She replied that it was on purpose. There's nothing to do when you're on vacation, no relationships, so she might as well work. But then she thought to herself that she hoped her mom would forgive her because, in truth, after learning that a stalker was watching her home, she felt safer at work than at home. Then, glancing at the window, the surprised girl asked if her mom had lifted the blinds. Her mom said she opened them when they came home. The girl walked to the window and said it was night and the blinds should be down. Everyone could see inside. She pulled them down anyway, remembering how someone had photographed her through that window when she first moved in. Looking at the apartment building across the street, she suddenly felt a strange sense of déjà vu. While staring out the window, she thought she saw someone, just for a moment, but brushed it off as her imagination. First, she thought she saw a flash. Then she saw that familiar gaze directed at her. He quickly hid, as if he'd pressed the button by mistake, and she froze in place, staring at the window. A horrible feeling of fear and disgust came over her. She couldn't even explain the shock she felt. Since there was no proof of any actual damage, the next day she immediately hung blinds over her windows. That's why she couldn't tell her mother about it. Later, her mom asked if something had happened at the pharmacy because someone called her while she was trying on shoes at the store. Joo Yi said everything was fine, nothing had happened. Then she thought she should call her boss, but really didn't want to. She couldn't understand why the man had asked if she was asking because she didn't know anything. His way of talking had this strange effect of ruining people's moods. She sent him the message they agreed on and answered his call. After all, she was with her mom, whom she hadn't seen in ages. She couldn't just sit there in silence. Then the girl started thinking about what she might have done wrong. She tackled him, gave the wrong number, made him think she was kidnapped, broke his watch. Yeah, that was the main thing. Joo Yi realized she'd done a lot of things wrong. Then her mom's phone rang. It was her dad calling, and she left the room to talk to him. The girl called Joon Won, greeted him, and asked if it was too late and whether he had already had dinner. The man simply answered yes, but the girl couldn't help wondering why she acted so sweet when talking to him. Joon Won asked if she would be at the pharmacy tomorrow because he wanted to see her, and asked when she finished work. In her head, she replied, "Never." Then she said it was probably late, and maybe he would agree. She thought to herself that she'd told him to just email her. The man said he had a lot to say, and their conversation could wait until they met in person. So the girl said she'd try to make it and suggested dinner tomorrow at 7 p.m. He agreed and said they'd meet in the underground parking lot, but she refused, saying that wasn't allowed. She thought it would just cause a bunch of women to start showing up at the pharmacy once they saw her get into his car. The girl suggested he choose the place himself and said she'd come there, and that they'd see each other tomorrow. Then her mom came into the room and said the girl's dad missed her and told her to come home soon because he didn't like eating alone. Her mom said that every time she visited, she thought their house wasn't that great. Back then, they couldn't even find a decent apartment because of the tomato fields. Then her mom hugged her and said she'd come again soon, told her not to worry, and asked if she was short on money. But the girl said that wasn't the problem. Her mom turned off the lights and said it was time to sleep since her daughter had to get up early for work. They lay down and the girl turned over, thinking how nice it was to be next to her mom again, and soon drifted into a sweet sleep. The man was also sleeping soundly when at 3 a.m. his phone rang again. The message read, "It's the third day, and here she is, the 3 o'clock fairy." Reading the message, the man was completely stunned. He couldn't understand what was going on. He sat on the edge of the bed and started reading the messages that had come to his phone. The girl wrote that she always messaged him at 3 o'clock, and if she ever bothered him, he could tell her any time and she'd stop. She could stop right now if he wanted. Joon Won frowned, thinking that it had only been 3 days, and yet she already wanted to stop writing. More messages kept coming. The girl wrote that she hated bothering anyone, but he had already suffered because of her. She said she wasn't really like that, and how she wished she could turn back time. She asked him to please just try not to hate her. The girl wrote that he should scold her brother instead. He was the one who hit him. And said her brother admitted it was his fault. But then she added that it wasn't necessary. She had already yelled at him enough. Cancel that. Joon Won kept reading. She asked him to try to understand her, not to be angry, and that she would always think of him with gratitude. Then she thanked him for planning to come save her in Paju, saying she wished she had better words than just, "I'm sorry," and that she'd have to think more deeply about how to express herself. Then another message came. "That's it. Your 3 o'clock fairy disappears now." The man didn't even get the chance to wish her goodnight before she turned off her phone. He thought he heard a man's voice at the end of the call saying, "Come here, please." He figured the girl must have been on a date. The next day, just as they'd agreed, the girl arrived at the restaurant to meet him. It was a beautiful place with stunning music playing in the background. Joon Won told her they'd be together today. The girl asked, "You mean for dinner?" And he replied, "What did you think?" She said she thought they'd just have some tea and that's it. Joon Won looked really confused. He thought that wasn't exactly the kind of topic you just ask about directly. But still, he gathered his courage and asked if she'd been on a date yesterday. The girl looked surprised and asked what he meant. The man said he was asking about something he didn't know, and the girl got really upset. She stood up and said that both yesterday and today he kept asking about things he didn't understand, so she had no idea what he was even talking about. The girl started shouting, saying she's not the type to dig up info even if she does know it. She only asks when she truly doesn't know, and maybe he just didn't think things through. Joo Yi snapped that there was no date. Things in her love life already weren't going great. And besides, no matter what she says, he keeps giving her that scary look and that tone of voice. The man looked at her seriously and asked if he really was like that. She replied that yes, he actually was, every single day. The girl sat down again, looking gloomy. Then Joon Won asked about dinner, something she hadn't even thought about. She admitted she hadn't thought about dinner at all, and anger started boiling inside her. Joo Yi explained that since he hadn't invited her to eat together, she assumed they'd just drink tea and talk. So before coming, she'd already eaten a triangle kimbap. The man leaned back in his chair, surprised. She knew things might get tense, yet she still ate beforehand. The girl looked a bit embarrassed and said she ate first because her stomach growls during serious conversations. The man thought to himself, maybe she gets nervous around others too. Or maybe she's just more casual or bolder with them. He asked what she did yesterday. Joo Yi said her mom came to visit and they spent the day together. Joon Won looked shocked. The girl confirmed it. Her mom really came. Joon Won asked if she'd spent the whole day with her, and she said of course. The girl looked at him and thought he was acting strange. He actually seemed happy about that. The man smiled faintly and said he was just asking, then wondered what they'd done together. She said nothing special. Just bought shoes and clothes. That made him curious about what else they did. She continued, saying they had cold noodles and dumplings, then grabbed some coffee. Joon Won wanted her to keep talking, but she stopped and asked if he was collecting a file on her. He laughed and said, "What, you think you're a celebrity? It's just called a conversation." The girl shouted back that that's exactly what she meant. What kind of quiz was he even running here? Joon Won said it was nothing, he was just asking questions, and she was answering them so nicely. She could ask him something too, if she wanted. Joo Yi said she didn't have anything to ask him at all. Just then, their order arrived. As she started eating, she mentioned that when she'd come here before with Kyung-eun and Bori, they'd only had tea. She didn't even know they served such fancy dinners. She was amazed. Even though she was full, the food was unbelievably delicious, and she felt like she could eat everything. The man smiled and said, "Funny, someone said she'd already eaten before coming." The girl replied that there's always room for food this good. And by the way, what exactly did he want to meet about? He thought to himself, to stop the flood of texts she kept sending him at 3 a.m., and to offer her an extension on paying for the watch she broke. He watched her enjoy her meal and wondered if he should really bring it up now. During dinner, Joon Won's phone rang. She told him to pick up since someone was calling. He slowly took the phone but set it aside. She looked puzzled and asked why he wasn't answering. She said she hadn't meant to look, but it seemed like it was his mom calling. He just sat there, lost in thought. Eventually, Joon Won answered. His mom scolded him, asking if it was that hard to pick up. Did he even plan on calling her back? She reminded him about tomorrow's meeting. He admitted he'd almost forgotten. His mom said she just wanted to know why he always disliked everything she arranged. She wasn't hiding girls from him or anything. Hearing that, Joo Yi got flustered and tried to leave to give him privacy, but he asked where she was going. She said she wanted to give him space to talk to his mom, but he told her he'd call back later and hung up. He told her to sit back down. She looked surprised, but he said she didn't have to go anywhere. Joo Yi thought maybe things between him and his mom weren't so great. Joon Won looked at her and said to just keep eating. Everything was fine. She continued dinner, but he kept staring at her intently. She couldn't understand why. She asked why he kept looking at her. He thought to himself that the reason he'd invited her was simple. He called her name but didn't say anything else, just thinking how things always seemed to change suddenly. He couldn't stop looking at her. Feeling awkward, he finally asked if she'd date with him. The question made her feel dizzy. She hadn't expected that at all. They sat in silence for a while, staring at each other, until he said it wouldn't be for long. She looked at him suspiciously, and he asked if she was planning to start a relationship with the man she loved in the near future. Joo Yi immediately replied, "Sí, sí," she replied. "Absolutely not." Then he asked if there was someone else she liked. Still eating, she said, "No, not at all." He smiled and said, "That's perfect. Then date with me." She protested, saying he must not have heard her. She clearly said no. He looked at her and said, "So there's no one you like and you don't want to date anyone, right?" She nodded and said that was true, but maybe he meant something else. He answered, "Yeah, I'm asking you to be with me." Joo Yi was completely shocked by his proposal and yelled that she didn't even want this kind of relationship. The man held out a fork with food and said she wouldn't lose anything, so there was no reason to refuse. The girl was flustered and thought, why on earth would there be no reason to refuse? What kind of arrogance is this? She pushed away his hand, holding the fork, and asked why he assumed her answer was yes. The girl said that right now her biggest headache was the stalker problem, not to mention the huge debt weighing on her shoulders. So why should she get into a relationship? And the biggest issue? She didn't even like him. She shoved the fork away again, telling him to chew his steak himself. Joon Won was taken aback and asked, "Why not me?" He couldn't process what she meant. His brain just froze. The girl asked if he actually liked her, but he replied that she wasn't his type. She was baffled and asked why he'd suggest dating then. He said, "Because you're suitable." Joo Yi looked utterly confused and asked what on earth he meant by that. Joon Won explained he was talking about his mom. The problem was that she wanted to speed up his marriage plans and kept trying to set him up every day. While eating, he added that he had no intention of getting married anytime soon and didn't plan to change that. He said his mom was extremely picky about looks, education, and career, constantly introducing him to random women. The girl said she understood, but she definitely didn't meet any of those standards. He replied that his mom didn't like people who like to argue. Surprised, the girl asked if he needed someone who can impress his mom at first and then make her give up. And if he was implying she was that person. The man looked straight at her and said he was sure she could play that role perfectly. The girl got angry and shouted, asking why she had to play a role. She was clearly offended by the suggestion. Then he reminded her that she'd already acted before, pretending to cry when they first met, thinking he was a stalker. Back then, she'd said she was scared and started crying. Outraged, she shouted, "When did I ever do that?" He calmly replied, "From the first time we met, up until now." Joo Yi thought he didn't even blink while saying that. Then she said, "Since he's clearly rich, wouldn't it be easier to just hire someone for the job?" He said, "How could I openly admit to something like that?" She snapped back, "Then what is this supposed to be? Is he scouting her?" Pouring herself a glass of wine, she muttered, "I didn't know you were a headhunter too." She told him to just find a woman who'd passionately love him, since he was so popular anyway. The man sighed and said he couldn't do that because he didn't want to trust something like this to his real girlfriend. Taking a sip of wine, Joo Yi thought, "So it's fine if I do it because I'll never be his woman." How romantic. Furious, she shouted, "So it's okay for me to do it, huh?" He replied calmly that he'd compensate her for it. The girl asked, "Compensate me for what? You, the director with a heart deeper than the ocean, won't even skip charging me for your broken watch." He said she wouldn't have to pay for that. In fact, he'd give her even more, so she should think about it carefully. She thought, "Oh my God, what's there to think about? This is completely insane." He sat there watching her intently. She asked why he was staring, and he replied that he was waiting for her answer. He leaned closer and said she should think carefully because he'd give her the best. She replied that he was being very kind to her. Joon Won asked how long he'd have to wait. The girl wanted to say something, but then changed her mind. She asked herself if she even had money. She broke his watch, and repairs could cost hundreds of thousands, maybe even $1 million. Where would she find that kind of money? Her parents already paid for her education, and now she'd broken someone else's luxury watch. The man asked if she was going to say anything. She looked completely lost and thought the real problem was just her pride. She closed her eyes and thought, "He'll forgive the debt and even pay me. Maybe I should just try it." It was hard for her to decide. What about her pride? Would she really give in just for money? Just as she didn't know what to do, her phone rang. She told him to wait a minute. It was her dad. He asked if she was outside, but she said she wasn't home. Then he told her to check her savings book when she got back. She was surprised. Why would he say that? Her dad said many people could overhear them and told her to just check it, and that's all. The girl grabbed her phone and checked her account. She couldn't believe her eyes. There were 100 million won in it. She was stunned, completely unable to understand what was going on. Her dad said he'd heard everything from her mom, that she was living who knows where in such a cheap place. He told her to use the money to move somewhere better. Then he added that he even threw in the money he'd saved for a new tractor, and now it was her turn to start earning for her future wedding. She flinched and said she'd do her best. Joon Won noticed how tense she was and asked what happened. She said it was nothing and told him to sit. She was ready to give her answer. He sat back down and listened carefully. She thought for a moment, then said she didn't like it. Joon Won didn't understand what she meant. She explained that she didn't like his proposal. He said she didn't have to repay him for the watch, but she insisted she would. He was surprised and said she must have misunderstood. He told her not to repay it and even offered her compensation. Didn't she want anything? The girl said she wanted nothing. Then he offered her money. She refused. Then he offered her a car. She refused again, completely rejecting everything he proposed. Joon Won paused, thought for a moment, then offered her a house. The girl was so confused she didn't even know what to say. The man asked if she really wanted a house. He didn't want to keep listing things if she was just stalling. What should she do? The girl wondered. Then she said that the man would just have to wait for his turn. She told Joon Won that he would be number 25 on the list of those who had offered her a house. She looked at him proudly, her eyes shining with happiness, and told him to wait for his turn. After dinner, they went outside where a car was waiting for the man, and he said that it was his driver. He told the girl to wait because he couldn't just send her home alone. They'd go together. Joon Won said that if she didn't trust him, she could take a picture of the car's license plate and send it to one of her friends. The girl was surprised and didn't understand what exactly she was supposed to do with the license plate. Did he really mean she should take a picture? She asked if he was joking. The man replied that he was absolutely serious, so she took the picture. Even though she stubbornly refused to ride with him, in the end, she was made to take the photo and was driven home. Despite his rough personality, he clearly had a pleasant side too. As she sat in the car on the way home, Joo Yi kept looking around and thought how wide it was. It must be difficult to park. She thought that someone with such a watch on his wrist must naturally have a car to match. The car was completely silent. The driver assumed he was taking a couple home tonight, but since they were sitting so far apart, he figured they must have argued. When they arrived at her building, Joon Won got out with her, thanked the driver, and wished him a good evening. The girl, surprised, asked if he wasn't leaving. He said he wanted to make sure she went inside safely since it was already late and dark. Looking around, he asked which building was hers, but she quickly said that wasn't necessary. The girl got flustered. She almost pointed to her house. Normally, she'd have snapped at any guy asking such a question, but now she couldn't understand what was happening to her. Joo Yi didn't know why she was being so unreasonably friendly toward him. Maybe he was trying to mess with her head. Reluctantly, she said her home was just ahead, then quickly said goodbye and tried to leave. But the man gave her a strange look. Not knowing how to stop her, he said he didn't like her purse, especially the strap. She was caught off guard. He smiled oddly, and the girl got offended, asking why he said it like that. Joo Yi moved closer to him and shouted that she was just about to say that the color of his knitted sweater was simply awful. She started shouting even louder about his sweater, his pants, and then thought, what else can I criticize about his image? She thought she had never seen such a perfect fit. Was he a soccer player or something? Trembling, she yelled again about his pants. The man calmly looked at her and asked if she wasn't going to go home. Joo Yi felt deeply insulted, angry that he had judged her so bluntly, then snapped that of course she was going home. While they were arguing, a girl suddenly appeared, greeted them, and asked if Joo Yi was heading home. Joo Yi turned around, smiled, and said yes. She was going home. Then she asked her neighbor where she was going, and the neighbor replied she was off to the store. Joo Yi clapped her hands excitedly and complimented her new hairstyle, saying it really suited her. The two girls started chatting, and the neighbor asked how she liked the new lock on her door. Joo Yi said she loved it and felt much safer now. The neighbor smiled, happy that the girl liked it and grateful she could help. About 2 months ago, when Joo Yi had panicked after seeing a delivery box at her door, the girl from the next apartment was the one who first talked to her. The neighbor was surprised by what had happened to Joo Yi and said she lived next door in apartment 304. Something similar had happened to her too. The neighbor told her that there was no point in reporting such things to the police, so she should just make sure to lock her door well. She had also shared a few highly effective lock options, which really helped Joo Yi feel safer, thanks to such a nice neighbor. Then the neighbor noticed that Joo Yi wasn't alone outside and asked who the man next to her was. The girl quickly denied that he was with her, even though just earlier, he had asked her to date him. The neighbor asked if he wasn't her boyfriend, then who was he? I turned sharply toward him, thinking what to say. She was so speechless she could barely breathe. Was he the man whose watch she broke? Or the man who saved her from being kidnapped? The neighbor said she had seen something earlier, a couple arguing outside, and asked if Joo Yi was planning to reject him now. The neighbor grabbed Joo Yi's hand, saying if so, they could go upstairs together. But the girl refused. The neighbor shouted that he wasn't part of her family, so why was a single girl standing here with a man she wasn't dating? Joon Won said the neighbor misunderstood the situation. Joo Yi quickly thanked her and said everything was fine. Joo Yi explained that he was the director of the company where she worked. He had just come because he was worried about her. But he was leaving now, and they were saying goodbye. The neighbor said if that was really the case, fine. But since she had known Joo Yi longer, she could always count on her for help. But Joon Won suddenly asked why the girl should trust her. Their conversation seemed so awful that he might have decided that the girls hardly knew each other. The neighbor said she actually saw Joo Yi more often than he did. The man smirked and said maybe she was counting how many times they met. Then the neighbor asked what he was suggesting, and he said that maybe they should start meeting every day. Joo Yi was outraged. What was even happening? What kind of ridiculous competition was this? The neighbor shouted, "Then why see each other every day if you're not dating?" The man replied, "Why does it matter to you?" Joo Yi was shocked. It felt like they were both fighting over her. And she was right, there was always a line of people wanting her attention. She said too many people wanted to befriend her, so she had to hand out numbered tickets. And if they wanted a new one, they could pick it themselves. Joon Won looked at her in disbelief. The girl said he had chosen number 25, but he didn't respond. Then she looked at her neighbor, who also didn't understand anything, and told her she was number 26. The girl apologized and said they should follow the cue. Then she laughed and added that it was just a joke. Everything was fine with her, so the neighbor could safely go to the store. The neighbor said that if everything was fine, she would leave them then. Joo Yi waved her hand and said, "See you soon." The girl felt very nervous and said she thought they were seriously going to fight. She sighed with relief when the neighbor finally walked away. The girl told the IFT not to take it the wrong way. The neighbor only reacted like that because she knew about the stalker. Then she said she should probably go. Joo Yi headed toward her building, wished him all the best, and apologized for everything. Though she added that maybe "that's enough" would be a better way to put it. Climbing the stairs, the girl thought she did well and handled everything perfectly. I mean, what kind of relationship involves compensation anyway? That's just insane. As she walked down the corridor, the girl got scared when she saw a door open and a man asked if she was the girl from apartment 303. Then he picked up a package and walked toward her. She noticed that the package was already opened. Joo Yi froze in fear, unable to move. The man asked if the package belonged to her. The girl trembled in fear, staring silently at the man before finally asking why the package was in his hands. The man shouted that he had brought her package out for her, and that in such cases, people usually say thank you first. The girl said it was her package and asked why he had opened it. She wondered if the address was even correct. The package shouldn't have been handed over to anyone. The man started yelling again, asking if that was really the only thing she cared about. Then he scolded her for wandering around at night drinking, saying the world was dangerous and she should use her head. The girl looked at him in confusion while he kept shouting that this wasn't the first time. Last time, her package also disappeared and she made a big scene by calling the police. Then he asked if she planned to apologize. The girl replied that she wouldn't apologize because she had no reason to. The man kept yelling and without even listening to her, called her shameless. The girl's expression darkened. She wondered what she'd done wrong and why she had to stand there listening to his insults. Suddenly, her phone rang inside her bag. The man threw the package on the floor and told her to consider herself lucky. Joo Yi picked up the package and saw that it was from her dad. She ran her hand over the box and thought about her parents. Tears welled up in her eyes. Holding the box tightly, she thought about how her parents must have worried while saving up the money to send it. When she entered the room, her phone rang again. The girl looked at the screen and saw that the call was from the director. Joo Yi answered the phone. It was Joon Won, walking down the street, asking if she got home safely. The girl slowly sat down on the floor and replied that he had seen her get home. He asked if something had happened, and she said everything was fine. He asked again if she was really okay, saying he was still nearby. Joon Won told her that he hadn't left yet, and if something happened, she could tell him. The girl looked confused, but said she was fine and wished him a safe trip home. While taking a shower, the girl thought about how she never accepts help. She decided she had to learn to protect herself. The next morning at the pharmacy, Joo Yi heard her coworkers chatting about something. On the floor stood a box filled with sandwiches and a teddy bear. Her coworkers called her over, and when she asked who needed her, they all looked at the box and commented on how delicious everything looked. The girl blushed slightly, embarrassed because at first she thought the sender was the director. She remembered how he had told her to think carefully, and that he would treat her kindly. Could he have sent this to convince her? The girl took the note and read it, then frowned. No way, she thought. Her friend standing beside her asked if she knew who sent it. Bori took the note from her and started reading it aloud. It said, "The snack is for you, in case you didn't have breakfast." Her coworkers giggled, saying the sender must not know what she likes, so he sent a variety of things. What if it's fate and you two end up dating? One of them teased. The girl read further and saw that the note said, "Next time I'll send something you really like." Her friend read the signature. It was from Ham-Young-tae. Joo Yi was stunned. Bori asked if that was the customs officer, the one who once said their names sounded cute together. She remembered him buying medicine and complimenting her name, saying it was beautiful. The girl thought he was approaching things completely the wrong way. What nonsense. Maybe it was better if no one said anything at all. The girl started making a phone call, and her friend asked who she was calling. Joo Yi said she needed to return everything. Her friend tried to stop her, saying it was fine. Their office was nearby, so she could deliver it herself. Then she sighed and said Joo Yi would spend her whole youth like this. What a shame. She replied that she wasn't even trying to save her youth. It'd be fine if he at least looked decent, but I don't even know what kind of person he is. The girl added that even if he looked good and had a normal job, she still didn't know who he really was. Her friend said, well, he's got a serious job. Just meet him and find out if he's a good guy or not. Joo Yi said, and if I disappear while trying to find that out? She even imagined the headlines, "Pharmacist goes on a date and vanishes." Her friend told her she was the queen of suspicion. Joo Yi replied that apparently her friend was too trusting. Bori thought, seriously, what's her problem? Who wouldn't want to get food, flowers, and gifts every morning? Maybe I should trade places with her. Then another coworker came over and told Bori that Joo Yi could handle herself. She added that it was obvious Bori didn't have anyone. The girl replied, not to that extent. Joo Yi said she'd been told the sandwiches could be eaten and the teddy bear thrown away. After all, if he sent them, they were no longer his concern. Her coworkers agreed. One coworker picked up the box and said there was so much inside. She asked what the guy was like. Joo Yi replied that he seemed like a nice guy, and honestly, she even felt a little bad that he was so kind. Bori said, if he seems nice, then at least meet him once. But the girl replied that she still didn't feel comfortable about it. Her friend asked if she knew what it was like to fall in love at first sight and how the heart starts pounding like crazy. Then she said maybe it's her first relationship since she mentioned she's never dated anyone before. Joo Yi replied that she should shout it even louder, and her friend apologized. Looking into the box, the girl said there's just too much stuff inside, so they should share some with cleaning ladies. Her friend agreed that it was a good idea, but joked that thanks to her, the head cleaner had started to gain weight recently. The girl asked if she didn't like that she brought food, but the friend said on the contrary, she was really happy about it. Then the door opened and two girls walked into the pharmacy. Joo Yi looked up and greeted them. One of the girls asked in surprise, you're here? Joo Yi was puzzled and asked if they were really talking about her. One of them replied, yes, about you. The girl frowned and thought, of course a pharmacist would be in a pharmacy. Where else would I be? Joo Yi remembered that one of the girls had come by before and said she'd seen her getting into a car. She figured they probably came to say something else this time. One of the girls looked at Joo Yi in surprise and said, that's strange. Then who was that woman I just saw? Joo Yi stared at them in confusion and asked what they were talking about. One of them explained that she was talking about director Joon Won. He was at a cafe with another woman right now. The two friends laughed and said they'd thought it was her. Joo Yi asked why they would think that when she was clearly at work and supposed to be here during business hours. Hwan agreed, but added that Ji-hye told her Joo Yi and the director weren't actually dating. The girl said maybe they just liked each other casually without any commitment. Or maybe they got out of the car together. People just love to gossip, don't they? They said director Joon Won was very popular, so there were always rumors around him. It was sad that women often misunderstood their admiration for something real. Hwan gave Joo Yi a sharp look and said that seeing this made it clear why things were so hard for him. Joo Yi flinched under her gaze and wondered why she looked at her so strangely. Leaning closer, the girl repeated, anyone would want to have someone like him. Joo Yi thought she was probably talking about her. Hwan said that everyone wanted to get close to director Joon Won, and she completely understood why. She thought Joo Yi would fall for him too. She thought about the pharmacist from the first floor, Hong Joo Yi, and how lately men had been throwing themselves at her. Now that she'd seen her, she realized there was something attractive about her, though she hadn't expected her to be this charming. The girls chatted among themselves, and Ji-hye said she understood the director better than anyone else, probably because they were similar, especially in appearance. The girl smiled shyly, clearly pleased by her friend's words. Then Joo Yi said something back to her, and the girl looked surprised, not understanding what she meant. Joo Yi said she understood her, but the girl asked again, confused, what she'd just said. Joo Yi asked for her name, and the girl replied, oh, Hwan. Joo Yi smiled warmly in response. She continued the conversation, saying that judging by her words, Hwan seemed to understand her, and she was really glad to meet her. Joo Yi handed Oh Hwan a bag of food and said that some people might call her greedy. But those who've been through similar things already have enough problems of their own. For example, she added, today they sent me so many sandwiches, and even this teddy bear. She sighed that it was hard to turn everyone down every time. Oh, Hwan thought something was wrong with her. Maybe she'd lost her mind. Joo Yi asked if she'd had breakfast yet, but the girl shouted that she'd misheard her. Joo Yi smiled and said, of course she'd heard her, then offered her a sandwich to take with her. The girls got angry, turned around, and stormed out of the pharmacy, muttering how annoying she was. Behind Joo Yi, her co-workers had been listening to the whole exchange. They clapped and joked that it was time to get back to work. Bori asked who that Oh Hwan was. She'd never seen her before. Then added with a grin that Joo Yi was never one to stay quiet. She always gave as good as she got. The coworker then asked if the director had a girlfriend. Joo Yi said surprisingly, no, then added she'd go return the sandwiches. The girl's phone rang. The coworker suggested Joo Yi go with her to the 9th floor, and she agreed. Joo Yi picked up her phone and saw a call from number 25. She looked shocked. It was Joon Won calling. She answered with, yes, number 25. The man was puzzled. Why was he number 25? Joo Yi smiled to herself, thinking he was saved under that number. He frowned and asked if she was already at work. She said yes, she was at work. He started to ask something about her morning, but she shouted that she'd already had breakfast. He asked if something had happened, but she said no. Then he wondered if something recently happened. Again, she said no, and reminded him he'd just asked that. He asked once more if something had gone wrong that morning. She yelled that everything was fine. Then he asked if something had ruined her mood, and she yelled again nothing had happened. Joon Won then asked about her plans for the evening. She first said none, then quickly changed it to, yes, she had plans. Joo Yi said she was busy now, so she was hanging up. The man thought to himself that she probably didn't have any plans after all. A few hours later, Joon Won's phone rang. It was Hyung calling, asking him to come down to the cafe for a bit. That morning, his brother had unexpectedly shown up, and Joon Won wondered if something had happened. It turned out his brother had arranged a 5-minute blind date for him. Who knew even his brother would worry about his marriage prospects? Sitting there, the man remembered the girl's confident words about why he wasn't such a bad person after all. He thought, why should he care what kind of bag strap she had? He wanted to apologize, but completely forgot when he heard her cold reply. What is this place anyway? Joo Yi thought in surprise. Maybe all office buildings are this beautiful. Her friend asked if it was her first time here and said that she was also amazed the first time. This place was really interesting. Then she added that there are many branches abroad, even separate buildings being constructed, so this place would soon be rented out again. While they were looking around, Joon Won's co-worker approached and greeted them. Ina handed him a bag of food and told him to eat there before leaving, since everyone was working. Another guy came up and asked if they were here to see Heo Min-jae and what was in the bag. Joo Yi replied that they brought sandwiches for everyone to share and handed the bag over. The guy smiled, took the bag happily, and said, well, this is just perfect. While working in his office, Joon Won heard voices in the hallway and wondered why it had suddenly gotten so noisy. Then he heard someone saying that Joo Yi had brought exactly what he wanted, sandwiches. The man's heart started racing when he heard that Hong Joo Yi was there. He thought, did she act cold on purpose just to surprise me with food? Then he tried to calm himself down, but overheard someone saying that she hadn't made them herself. One of the guys asked if she had bought them, but she replied she hadn't. Then he joked that the building's prettiest girl must have come just for him. Joo Yi looked embarrassed, wished them a good meal, and said it was time to go. The guy said they couldn't just leave so suddenly. He teased her, saying she looked beautiful even with her work hairstyle. Joo Yi froze a little at that. The guy apologized and added that he'd heard their boss prefers modest outfits, but seeing her today, he doubted that was true. Joo Yi said she'd be upset hearing something like that, but the guy replied that she was both beautiful and kind. Right after that, someone came up and stepped hard on the guy's foot. It hurt a lot. It was Joon Won. He said, why are you sticking your foot out? I almost tripped. The guy muttered that he didn't even look before stepping. Joon Won walked up to Joo Yi and asked why she was there. She said it would only take a minute, then turned to ask Huijo if he was okay. Joo Yi glanced at Joon Won. He looked incredible, dressed sharply in a luxury suit. He asked if something had happened to her. She thought he seemed unusually polished today, remembering what the girls at the cafe said, that he was having coffee with another woman that morning. Maybe he had a meeting scheduled early. Joo Yi told Joon Won nothing had happened, then asked Huijo again if he was really fine. Joon Won thought she clearly had no business with him. Huijo asked the director why he stepped on his foot. He could clearly see where he was going. The guy said it seemed intentional, and Joon Won calmly replied that it was. Then Huijo said he'd better get back to work, wished Joo Yi and Ina a good day, and asked Min-jae if he was coming with him. Min-jae thanked them for coming, wished them a good day, and raised his hand to wave goodbye. But Joon Won slapped his hand lightly and said, "Have a good day." Min-jae was taken aback. He looked at his hand in confusion and said, "I think he's mad." The girls said it was time for them to go too. Joon Won asked if they were really leaving already. Joo Yi slightly bowed her head and said, "See you." The girl turned and left. Her friend apologized to the director, saying it was probably rude of them to drop by unannounced. She explained that Joo Yi had received a bunch of snacks, so they decided to bring some to Heo Min-ji and his team, and that he hadn't called them. They came on their own. The girls quickly ran to the door, said goodbye, but Joon Won held it open to stop them. Joon Won asked Joo Yi who gave her those snacks. She looked flustered, not understanding why he was asking. He looked at her for a long moment, then invited her to have dinner together that evening. That evening at the cafe, Joon Won told her she didn't owe him anything and tore up the written agreement. He brushed his hand across the torn pieces and said he had no claims against her anymore. The girl was shocked that he did that and asked if he could really just tear it up. Joon Won said, honestly, it wasn't a request, it was a job offer. He needed her help. He explained that he had been thinking about what kind of compensation to ask for, but money was the only thing that came to mind. The girl started to protest, but he reminded her that she once said she didn't want that. Joon Won looked a bit uncertain, then offered to protect her from the stalker. He said he'd protect her, and she looked stunned. He asked if she'd agree to that. The girl got upset and said, knowing her situation, how could he say something like that so easily? What if he got hurt? The man replied he never said it would be easy and asked if she'd accept it if he worded it differently. She didn't understand how he planned to protect her, but he said he'd do whatever she asked. Joo Yi looked at him, completely confused, and asked if he was joking. Joon Won answered seriously. He wasn't joking and was fully confident in himself. Then he suggested they use each other without guilt. He said, I'll do whatever it takes for myself, and you'll do the same. His words left her speechless. Joo Yi had no choice. Packages kept arriving open, and she never knew what state they'd come in. Every night, walking home, she felt like she was running from the darkness of the road itself. And every time she finally fell asleep at dawn, the nightlight in her room kept burning softly. The girl thought that she didn't quite know what exactly, but there was definitely something she could ask for in their arrangement. After all, they both needed this relationship, so there was no reason to pretend to be better than they were. Joo Yi said that if they could set boundaries, she agreed, and suggested they should do that right away. The girl asked what would happen if they couldn't, and he replied that, of course, he would never bring back their old contract. Then she curiously asked what exactly she was supposed to do that made him so willing to forget about the previous contract. It turned out she had to pretend they were dating. At first, acting like the perfect girlfriend. She needed to behave in a way that would please Director Doo's mother. But afterward, she had to act absolutely unbearable. So unbearable that his mother would stop pushing him toward marriage. The girl asked if only after that his mother would finally give up the idea of finding him a wife and stop arranging blind dates for him. And 2 months later, he'd leave the country without telling his family, because he'd have no reason to come back. The girl asked if that was really true, and he confirmed it. After Joo Yi tasted the dessert and really liked it, a drop fell from her spoon onto her clothes, and she felt very embarrassed. The man took a napkin out of his pocket and handed it to her. She started quickly wiping the stain off her outfit. He turned away at first, but when he looked back, the girl asked why they had to do this 2 or 3 times a week. He was confused and didn't understand what she meant. The girl explained that he had just said so. Since their relationship was fake, they should do it that often. He still didn't get what she was talking about, but then she clarified she was talking about dates. Finally, he understood and said it was necessary because they needed to be seen together. The girl asked, seen by whom? Besides your mom, are there people around who report back to her? What is this, some kind of spy or something? The man replied it was Ho Huijo. The girl was shocked. She had thought he seemed like such a nice guy. Then the girl said she'd felt weird when he called her hairstyle a work look. The man was confused. She reminded him that he'd said it that morning while looking at her hair. Then, touching her hair, she asked if he really thought this looked like a work hairstyle, and who even made such style, men or women. Joo Yi said that morning had already been frustrating for her. The man asked what happened, and she replied, "Nothing really." Joo Yi thought about Oh Ha-won and how she had completely pissed her off. But it wasn't like she cared whether the director was seeing other girls, not one bit. Looking at her, Joon Won asked what she was thinking about, but she said it was nothing and asked what he had been talking about. He said that his mother might call her to meet. Joo Yi replied that she'd handle it, and whatever she told his mother, she wouldn't report it to him, then asked if he was okay with that. The girl said that in dramas or books, in such situations, the man usually takes care of the girl, shows up dramatically, and stands up to his mother for her. The man answered that he was looking for someone who would stand up to his mother. The girl said she got it, and that he clearly had no sense of humor. He also said their relationship didn't need to go beyond the area where he worked. Joo Yi didn't mind. She said that was perfect, since she didn't like anyone invading her private life anyway. She also said she didn't want him crossing the boundary she mentioned earlier. The man looked confused and asked what boundary she meant. Like touch, she said. That's completely off limits. She didn't want him touching her. Joon Won asked, surprised. But what if it's necessary? The girl got angry. She didn't like that question at all. Joon Won said, "Can you imagine a couple who's supposed to be engaged with no touching at all? We'll have to act in front of others. Even my family." He added that he wasn't pushing her, just suggesting they could make an agreement if needed. The girl paused to think. She thought for a moment and said, "If it's necessary, then..." The man looked surprised, waiting for her answer. She blushed and then said she agreed, and that they'd do it. Then she turned her head away angrily. Joon Won looked at her carefully and said they should now talk about what she wanted, since they'd be spending so much time together, and if she needed anything. Joo Yi said that every matter needs a good beginning and an ending, but she'd start from the end. The man was surprised and wondered why she was starting with the ending. Joo Yi smiled and said that when everything ends and they break up, he should act like he's heartbroken and deeply regrets it. There were many girls in the building interested in Mr. Do Joon Won. Once people in the pharmacy or at his office found out they were dating, rumors would spread through the whole building instantly. The girl thought that if he was planning to leave the country with a clean image, what would happen to her? Who would stay and keep working at the pharmacy? She had to protect her dignity by making him regret their breakup. The man said he honestly didn't even know how to be heartbroken. The girl told him she'd explain it closer to the end. Joon Won said that in that case, they should go back to the beginning. She agreed, saying he was right. The beginning was half of everything, and he knew it. Then, smiling, she suggested that tomorrow he should come to her pharmacy and confess his love to her. The man was shocked that he'd have to confess his love, and even more surprised by how casually she suggested it. The girl noticed his embarrassment and repeated that he really needed to confess his love. He was still shocked. He had never done something like that, especially in front of everyone. The girl said he should do it sincerely and emotionally. He knew how important that was. Boring confessions usually ended everything right there, so he had to prepare well. Joon Won shouted, asking if she was out of her mind and if she was actually serious about all this. She replied that she was completely serious, and it was obvious that she herself was nervous too. By emotionally, she meant he should practically cling to her. The man thought, is she seriously expecting me to do that too? The girl said he could back out if he didn't like it. Joon Won frowned, thinking maybe he really should back out. The girl thought she started it all just to shock him, but she couldn't shake the feeling that it was going to backfire on her. She told the director that, in any case, he'd benefit the most from all of this, and asked if he knew why. Joo Yi said, first of all, she didn't like him and would absolutely never like him in the future. She didn't even dream about any progress between them, so she wouldn't be shedding any tears. Second, even if his mother said something really cruel to her, it wouldn't hurt, because she didn't like him anyway. And lastly, the third reason, the one he'd probably like the most. When the man came home late that evening, he was completely exhausted after a long day at work and went straight to bed. As he was sleeping soundly, his phone suddenly rang. Another message came through at 3 a.m. The message said that it was still spring, though it felt like the dullest and most miserable season, except maybe right after lunch. Then the girl asked if the director was tired of her messages and whether they could start calling each other. The message continued, saying that he could simply tell her to stop right now if he wanted to, but it wasn't hard for her to keep texting him anyway. She said she could wait until he felt better and that she wished something would lift his mood and make him smile. Reading the message, the man quietly muttered to himself that he was smiling already, thanks to her. The message went on. Today, tomorrow, and always, may your life be full of grace. And when you find a girlfriend, I wish you a long life together. And if you don't have one yet, may she appear within a day. That's all for today. Joon Won sat up on the edge of his bed and suddenly remembered the third reason the girl had mentioned. She had said that if fate decided within those 2 months that he'd fall in love, she would never ask him to take responsibility and would immediately let him away. The man kept thinking about what she said, about her being able to let him away. He sat there for a long time, deeply lost in thought. The next morning, when the girl came to work at the pharmacy, her coworker was shocked to see her wearing a skirt. Joo Yi looked absolutely stunning. The coworker said she had never seen her wear a skirt, not since they entered college until this very day. Bori was also surprised to see that Joo Yi had something on her face. Makeup. A bit embarrassed, Joo Yi said she'd been feeling sad, so she decided to put on some makeup while watching tutorial. The coworker said it wasn't even possible to feel sad in the morning and noticed that Joo Yi had even put blush on her cheeks. Joo Yi replied that she just wanted to try it. Bori kept staring at her and said anyone could tell that a lot of effort went into that makeup. Joo Yi was surprised and asked why she even needed to doll herself up in the first place. Joo Yi said she simply had some free time, so she decided to do her makeup. But her coworker kept asking if something had happened. The girl proudly said that nothing happened. She just wanted to dress nicely and her friend shouldn't start imagining things. The girl thought that, actually, she'd dressed like this today without any special reason. She just hadn't slept much at night, but definitely not because she was nervous or excited. Maybe this whole confession thing had been unnecessary, but the thought of him confessing still made her a little anxious. She wondered how that man would even confess his love, and if she should be nervous about it. When Joon Won said she had nothing to lose, she thought that everyone would say he clearly didn't know a thing about relationships. The girl decided that preparing the right outfit for a confession was essential, and that her raspberry-colored skirt would be perfect. As Joo Yi went to wash her hands, she looked in the mirror and thought that she needed to be extra polite today. Jung-un told her she had amazing legs and asked why she decided to show them off today of all days. Smiling, Joo Yi replied that it was just an unexpected impulse. The weather was great and the air was so fresh. Jung-un laughed and said that the weather had been just as nice last year at this time, yet Joo Yi hadn't worn a dress even once. The girls joked that they were starting to think maybe her legs had gotten overgrown like weeds, or that her calves looked like sweet potatoes. Joo Yi laughed and said that since they'd finally seen her legs, they could say hi to her legs. Joo Yi asked her coworker if she looked weird. She felt a little awkward and wondered if she looked too rustic. Her friend asked whether she wanted to know because she needed reassurance she looked pretty or because she was genuinely curious. Joo Yi said she already knew she was pretty. She just wanted to know if she looked prettier than usual. Her coworker joked that she was a loser, then smiled and said that meant she really was beautiful. The girls still had doubts and teased her, asking if there was a reason behind all this. Was it that manager, or maybe a plastic surgeon? But Joo Yi denied everything. As she got to work, she thought that this pair, her and Joon Won, was a match made in hell, and even her prayers hadn't lasted long. Still, she thought it was good that their relationship wasn't real, though at least she'd get to attend a few desirable events. The most important thing was to make their fake relationship look convincing to everyone, and maybe even experience the kind of romance people only dream about. Her coworkers kept trying to find out who the guy was, but Joo Yi just laughed and said no one. A little later, a delivery man came into the pharmacy and asked for someone named Joo Yi. She walked up to him and said, "That's me." The man walked, clutching the handle of a box with beautiful pink roses in his hands. Joon Won kept thinking about confessing his feelings and decided it was time to end the uncertainty. So he bought a small bouquet of flowers. When he arrived at the pharmacy, he placed the bouquet by the door, opened it, and called out for Joo Yi. Then he walked in, and Joo Yi's coworker was absolutely shocked to see Director Do standing there. The director asked if Joo Yi had come to work yet. The guy replied that she was already working and called her over. Director Do had already planned everything. He would bring her outside and hand her the bouquet from the bag. Then he'd start a lovely conversation, confess his feelings, and suggest they start dating, and maybe even get married later. He thought to himself that she probably wouldn't return the flowers even if she didn't like his confession. Though with this woman, anything was possible. Suddenly, the man froze when something huge flashed before his eyes. But to his surprise, the man saw that the girl was holding another huge and beautiful bouquet in her hands. Joo Yi asked her coworker if he had called her, but unexpectedly, she saw Director Do and asked what had happened. Joon Won was very nervous because something had gone wrong, he thought. The flowers that he had prepared during the night were already a bit wilted. Ina noticed another bouquet behind the door and, surprised, asked the girl where it had come from. Joo Yi also didn't understand anything when she saw even more flowers. The girl took the flowers and told everyone to wait because she wanted to see who they were from. Joon Won couldn't understand anything either. Her coworker came closer to the flowers and was shocked to see that there was no card attached. Then Joon Won remembered that he really hadn't placed a card with the bouquet, which meant the girl wouldn't know they were from him. The girl looked at the director in surprise and asked if the flowers were not from him. The man smiled, looking straight into her eyes, and replied, "Why would I do something like that?" Joo Yi felt very disappointed because she really wished the flowers had been from him. She thought, why not? But then again, this was just a contract relationship, so of course he wouldn't feel the same excitement she did. But wouldn't it have been possible to confess love in front of everyone? Then she looked at her outfit and decided to think that she had dressed beautifully just for herself. The girl was very angry with herself, then remembered that he had said he would do anything she asked. Later, Choi Kyung-eun came up and said that the director seemed like a really good person and had bought various nutritional supplements for the staff. Joo Yi thought about how, despite buying up all the nutritional supplements, he left empty-handed. The girl sat there thinking, does a confession really have to happen in the morning? It wouldn't be weird if he came and confessed in the evening. Then she heard her coworkers say it was time to go home. Joo Yi couldn't stop thinking that maybe he'd come after work. Then her coworker asked Ina if she'd be waiting for Min-jae at the cafe today, and she said there was no need to wait this time. Then the girl was surprised to hear that the director had left even before lunch and told the rest of the team to go home an hour earlier. Joo Yi wondered if he had really left so abruptly. Then she turned to Ina and said she was lucky. At least someday she'd finally go on a date. Her coworker noticed her beautiful shoes and asked where she was going in such stunning heels. Maybe on a date? But Joo Yi said she was just going home. Ina was surprised and thought she was acting strange today. The girl was about to go home and thought that they hadn't agreed on any date anyway, and she'd be silly to think the confession would happen today. As she was leaving, she overheard her coworkers talking about how handsome the director was. That morning, he looked absolutely stunning, radiating pheromones, and just one look from him could make your head spin. Jiho clarified that he had only said the director was handsome, nothing more, and that it was weird to talk about pheromones while he was standing right there. The girls laughed and said it was fine. He still had a long way to go to match that level of charisma and presence. The coworker got annoyed by their words, but then Joo Yi came up and asked who they were talking about. The girls replied that they were talking about Director Do from the 9th floor, and Joo Yi pretended not to be very interested. Then she said he wasn't that handsome anyway. Jiho agreed, saying he knew Joo Yi would side with him. Sure, he wasn't as amazing as Bori made him out to be. Though yes, he was tall, athletic, and dressed neatly. The girl got a little nervous and said that it's rare to find a guy like that in their area. When she suddenly turned around, she looked flustered and quickly walked away. Her coworkers asked what was wrong with her. When everyone turned toward the pharmacy entrance, they saw Director Do standing there. They were all shocked. He slowly opened the door and walked inside. The man looked serious and absolutely stunning. Looking around, he asked if Hong Joo Yi had already left, but they told him no, she was still nearby, and then they called her. Joo Yi got very nervous and thought, he really came again? I need to get myself together. This isn't serious. The girl asked in surprise why he needed her specifically and what had happened that made him come to the pharmacy. The director looked at her and said it was really hard for him, and he didn't even know how to start. He handed her a bouquet of incredibly beautiful flowers and asked if she couldn't see or understand what was happening. Joo Yi shook her head as if she didn't understand anything and thought that a confession like this should at least feel real. Looking at Joo Yi, the man invited her on a date. But the girl said in surprise that she didn't understand why it had to be her. Looking into her eyes, he said, because I like you. It made Joo Yi very happy to hear that. Joon Won said he liked her. A lot more than she thought. Much, much more. Her coworkers stood nearby, shocked that he had confessed. They hadn't expected it at all. Then the man told Joo Yi to look carefully at the bouquet. She thought, could there be money inside? The girl was very surprised to find an envelope. When she opened it, she was even more shocked. It was an ID card. Joon Won told her to unfold it completely. Inside were also a health certificate, a certificate of no criminal record, which was very hard to get, and his school records showing excellent grades and active participation in extracurriculars. There was even an award for good behavior, meaning he had been a role model for others. But the girl thought, why is he showing me all this? The man explained that it was all for her peace of mind. Of course, they still had a lot to learn about each other. 498. Bori texted Choi Kyung-eun and asked if things had been going on for a while. Maybe it was love at first sight. Bori texted Choi Kyung-eun and asked if things had been going on for a while. Maybe it was love at first sight. 511, Joon Won indignantly asked why he would even do that. The girl replied that he just didn't know what kind of relationship they had. Kyung-eun texted back, asking if they saw how shocked the other girls were earlier. They were practically glued to the window. Jiho replied that even he was in shock. After everything that happened, Joo Yi and Joon Won went outside, got into the car, and drove through the city. In the car, the girl took her phone, read all the messages from her coworkers, and smiled, telling the director that he did a great job. Joo Yi couldn't stop laughing at all those messages. Joon Won looked at her curiously and asked what she was talking about. She showed him all the documents that had been placed inside the bouquet and said he really went all out. How did he even think of preparing and bringing something like that? Out of all the confessions she'd ever received, this one was the most sincere and genius. The man smiled and said, "Hardly." Smiling, the girl said it really was the best. He must have been so nervous while planning everything. But he replied that he wasn't nervous at all. He just thought about it and it simply came to him. Joo Yi was surprised and asked if the bouquet he left that morning was also part of his plan since she'd checked the entrance cameras. The man reluctantly admitted it. Then she asked about the supplements he bought, but he said he was just the kind of director who takes care of his employees. The girl replied that Jiho must have misunderstood. Joon Won asked if that was the same Jiho who worked at the pharmacy, and the girl confirmed that yes, it was him. He thought the man bought all those supplements because he was angry. He'd said Joon Won had feelings for the girl, and when he saw the bouquet from someone else, he got mad and used that as an excuse to buy all those things. Joon Won indignantly asked why he would even do that. The girl replied that he just didn't know what kind of relationship they had. She said that morning he wouldn't stop talking her ear off right next to her. The man was surprised by her use of the word next to. He asked sharply if Jiho really worked right next to her, and she said yes, right beside her. Then Joon Won said it sounded like they were close. Joo Yi answered that of course they were. They saw each other every day. He had a great personality and she enjoyed working with him, so they got along well. The man looked surprised, but she went on saying he often said weird things, so her coworkers had given her advice about it. Joon Won felt irritated that she kept talking about her coworker and told her he didn't want to hear about him. The girl noticed his tone and said she'd been too loud. She wouldn't say another word for the rest of the ride. But he replied that's not what he meant. Confused, she asked what he did mean and why he was saying it like that. She couldn't understand him. "It's fine," Joon Won said, though in his mind he admitted he just didn't like hearing Hong Joo-yi talk about other men. Sometime later, Hong Joo-yi and Joon Won walked into a cafe to eat and waited for the elevator. The girl touched his hand and said the food there was really good. She was starving. He smiled and then the elevator doors opened. The elevator was packed with people chatting. When they got in, there was barely any space left. As the doors closed, the man wrapped his arms around Joo Yi as if shielding her from everyone else inside. He looked at her, noticing how uneasy she seemed, and pulled her even closer to his chest. As the elevator went up, he kept his hands gently on her shoulders, not letting go for even a moment, while she looked at him in surprise. Finally, the elevator stopped on the 23rd floor, and he said it was time to get out. The girl felt strangely flustered and muttered how hungry she was. Sitting at the cafe table, the man looked at Joo Yi and asked if she was avoiding him. She quickly said, "Of course not." Soft music played in the cafe. The man said maybe he'd imagined it, but she shook her head. "No, you didn't." Joon Won took a sip of wine, gazed at Joo Yi tenderly, and said, "All right then." The girl was stunned. How could he stay so calm? She still hadn't recovered, and her face was burning. Joo Yi brought up what happened in the elevator and asked if it didn't mean anything to him. Joon Won looked surprised and asked why she thought that. He'd never done anything like that with anyone else. Didn't it mean something to her? That unfamiliar feeling she experienced for the first time in her life, when their eyes met and his warm gaze reached her heart, made it almost burst. How could she tell him that to his face? Turning away, she said, "Of course not," pretending it was nothing. There was nothing she could have done. Joon Won suggested they leave things as they were. Naturally, she agreed, though she thought maybe it really didn't mean anything after all. Then the man said he wanted to ask her something. She listened carefully as he asked about the third condition. Joon Won asked if she wouldn't hold him responsible if he ended up liking someone else. She replied, "Of course not." "Then if you meet another man, you'll go to him." he said, looking at her strangely, waiting for an answer. But Joo Yi felt lost and couldn't respond right away. After dinner, they got into the car again, and she said she'd been thinking. Surprised, he asked about what. She said, "If I feel that he's truly the one, shouldn't I go to him?" "If it's fate, you can't fight it," she added. "You might miss your chance." Then she asked who his first love was. Joon Won looked at her, smiled, and asked if she'd really never dated anyone. She repeated, "So, yes or no?" She thought maybe he really hadn't dated anyone, but then decided he was laughing at her. Annoyed, she thought, "Oh, sure, it's fine for him, but not for me." He never said anything when they made the deal, but now he's saying that's not allowed? Then she smiled and told Director Do that if she ever met someone right for her, she'd go to him. Joon Won was deeply moved, looked at her carefully, and asked, "And what about me? What would you do with me then?" The girl angrily replied, "Did we ever agree to be responsible for each other? If you meet the one, you'll go to her, and I'll let you." Then he asked, who decided that? Seeing the strange look in his eyes, Joo Yi quickly said no. It wasn't her who decided, so everything was fine. She suggested setting a minimum period, the time it would take for his mother to fall in love with her and then make him break up with her. At first, the girl said 1 month, but after thinking for a bit, she changed it to maybe a month and a half. Joon Won didn't know what to say. He said that she'd be free once his mother gave up on the idea of him getting married, so she could probably handle everything quickly. She said she could make his mother dislike her, say she wasn't the right daughter-in-law, and start offering her money to leave. She had only seen envelopes full of cash like that in dramas. Joon Won was driving, carefully thinking everything through, and finally said she had 2 months. The girl protested that his schedule was already packed, especially since he had to leave in 2 months, but he insisted. Joo Yi shouted that it was way too long. She wasn't some toy for him to use, nor could he forbid real love from coming her way. Looking at her, he tried to calm her down a little and said she wasn't a toy for anyone. Then he added that she was like Snow White pretending to be dead, even though her prince had already come for her. Or maybe like Cinderella, whose glass slipper fits perfectly, yet she insists it's not hers. But the girl replied, "Then how is she any different from the little mermaid who quietly watches her prince marry a witch?" Joo Yi asked if those comparisons were his way of defending himself, because his words actually hurt her. Trying to keep a straight face, she thought she might lose her mind. If she laughed now, those 2 months really would turn into 1. When they arrived at her house and got out of the car, the man said there was nothing they could do. Even if it hurt, a contract is a contract. Frowning, the girl said he was selfish. As he opened the car door for her, he replied that he'd do the same. He'd leave everything up to fate and wouldn't date anyone, psych. I'd sign, even if love came along. So, she just had to endure 2 months, hung Joo Yi. Then it would all end quickly. As she stepped out of the car, she smiled and said she agreed to endure the 2 months. Looking around, Joon Won asked what happened to the streetlights. The street was completely dark. But the girl replied that she'd be moving soon. When he asked where, she said she was still figuring it out and wished him a safe trip home. He kept watching her walk away, then asked if he could walk her home. The girl turned and looked at him in surprise. He offered to walk her just to the door, but she smiled and said, "Starting tomorrow." Sitting back in his car, he remembered that she had called him selfish. He thought to himself that she was right. He was stealing someone's precious time. Then he realized he was even taking away someone's chance at good fortune. Of course, guilt began to creep in. But the moment he imagined seeing her with another man, his heart started racing. He paused for a minute, then heard his phone ring. It was Hong Joo Yi calling. She sounded nervous and said they had figured it out. At first, he didn't understand what she was talking about. The girl suddenly shouted that it must be what he wanted to discuss with her, but he asked what was going on and if something had happened. She explained that when she turned on her phone to text him, the messages she thought she'd sent during the day at 3 p.m. were actually being delivered at 3 a.m. Joo Yi wanted him to tell her she was mistaken somehow. Finally, he understood why her messages had been coming at 3 a.m. every night. With a smile, Joon Won told her that she'd only just realized that now. The girl still couldn't calm down. She didn't understand how or why she'd been sending those late-night texts. The man said, "Shouldn't she be asking herself that?" Joo Yi, embarrassed, said it must have been the alcohol. She usually didn't get drunk like that. She said she'd been really mad that day and apologized sincerely, saying she never planned or wanted any of it to happen. The man didn't answer right away, and she asked if he was listening. He said yes, and smiled. Gripping the steering wheel with one hand, he listened carefully and said he already knew everything. Hearing that, the girl felt a huge weight lift off her chest. She exhaled deeply and asked again if he really had known all along. She thanked him again for understanding, but wondered why he never mentioned the 3 a.m. messages if he'd been receiving them every night. Then she nervously asked if he hadn't woken up because of them, but he said his phone was always on silent while he slept. She sighed in relief and said, "Thank God." Then Joon Won asked what she was doing now, and she said she'd take a shower and go to bed. Hearing that she was safe at home made him feel calm, and he wished her good night. The girl found his words unexpectedly touching. She replied, "Yes, Director," and wished him good night too. He said he'd come see her tomorrow. She agreed and said, "See you then." Joon Won replied, "See you tomorrow," and hung up. Then he noticed a new message on his phone. It said, "The 3 a.m. messages are officially over." Joon Won turned off his phone, placed it beside him on the seat, and murmured that maybe he should have just left things the way they were. The next morning was bright and sunny. The girl had slept well and, as usual, was getting ready for work at the pharmacy. When she stepped outside, she saw Joon Won arriving at her house. He asked if she'd been waiting for him long. Smiling, she tucked a strand of hair behind her ear and said no. She'd just come out. He opened the car door for her, apologized, and said he shouldn't keep her waiting. She replied it was no big deal. When she got into the car, he leaned closer and asked if today was a special day. The girl looked puzzled, not understanding why he'd ask that. Joon Won looked at Joo Yi with deep admiration and told her she looked absolutely stunning today. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this review, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new video. Let me know in the comments what you thought of this story and what manhwa you'd like to see next. See you in the next installment.